Chapter 372. Previously, when Mei Qinglian mentioned the World Sword Sect Conference, Chu Xiu was still a little doubtful. Although he had heard of the World Sword Sect Conference in the original plot, it shouldn't have been so big. Only now did Chu Xiu realize that in the original plot, it wasn't called the World Sword Sect Conference, but the righteous and demonic battles on floating Jade Mountain. Chu Xiu had also guessed the reason. It was probably because the 5 major sword sects had caused too big of a commotion, so big that it implicated both the righteous and demonic sections. Both sides fought fiercely on floating Jade Mountain, ultimately turning the World Sword Sect Conference into a war between the righteous and demonic sections. Moreover, this matter affected the entire pugilistic world. It could be said that it was the biggest conflict between the righteous and demonic sects since the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult. Since that was the case, this matter wasn't like what Mei Qinglian had said, where he only needed to represent the Yin demon sect to go through the motions and he would be able to get all sorts of benefits. Instead, there was a huge risk involved. Although that was the case, Chu Xiu didn't want to reject it. The reason was simple. While there were risks, there were also huge benefits in the war between the righteous and demonic sects. Fighting in the pugilistic world would always improve more than training in seclusion. Chu Xiu also realized that he was actually a militant. Although he would sometimes use some schemes, to Chu Xiu, as long as it could be solved with fists and knives, he was actually too lazy to use his brain. Fortune came from danger. This was actually the most commonly used truth in the pugilistic world. Unless it was those who were blessed with great luck, sitting at home, divine skills would come from the heavens. The remaining 99% of the people in the pugilistic world wanted to become stronger, but they still had to rely on themselves to fight. Chu Xiu looked at Mei Qinglian and said, "How should I go to the World Sword Sect Conference? I'm the Guanxi penal officer after all. It seems a little troublesome to leave my fief without permission." Mei Qinglian stood up and said, "You don't have to worry about this. Let me handle it." This time, the 5 great sword sects wanted to be in the limelight. They put on a grand show and sent out quite a number of posts. Naturally, one of them was from the Guanzhong torture room. At that time, I will let you represent the Guanzhong torture room to attend the World Sword Sect Conference. When the Bone Tree Villa's Devil Dao Alliance meeting begins, you should go and find that kid from the Phaseless Demon Sect, Lu Jin. He will definitely be there this time. The Phaseless Demon Sect is one of the stronger ones in my hidden devil lineage. That brat Lu Jin also owes me a favor. I have already informed him, this time he will tell you what to do. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. With Mei Qinglian's control over Guanxiu, it was normal for her to be able to do this. In the next few days, Chu Xiu spent most of his time cultivating in the torture hall branch. As for sending Chu Xiu to represent the Guanzhong torture room to attend the World Sword Sect Conference, Guanxiu quickly gave the order. Most of the warriors in the Guanzhong torture room were somewhat dissatisfied with Chu Xiu participating in the World Sword Sect Conference as a representative. They felt that Guanxiu was too biased towards Chu Xiu. It was fine to send Chu Xiu to participate in the previous God Weapon Conference, but that was only an arena for the younger generation. There was indeed no one in the younger generation of the Guanzhong torture room who was stronger than Chu Xiu. But the World Sword Sect Conference this time included all the heroes of the large sects in the Jianghu. As a spectator, he represented the power of the sect behind him. He would definitely be in the limelight. What ability did Chu Xiu have to represent the entire Guanzhong torture hall? In terms of seniority, the other 3 disciplinary officers were more senior than Chu Xiu. In terms of strength, which of the leaders of the punishment hall were not stronger than Chu Xiu? In the end, this person had to be Chu Xiu. Among the other disciplinary officers, Shao Yi and Chu Simo did not say anything. Only Yin Batong objected the most. He even specially wrote a few letters to Guanxiu, asking her to carefully consider this matter. However, he was ignored by Guanxiu in the end. This made Yin Batong feel helpless. After receiving the notice, Chu Xiu made some arrangements for the Guanxi area before heading to West Chu. Actually, there were no arrangements. Chu Xiu could be said to be the strongest and most murderous of all the disciplinary officers that had controlled the Guanxi area over the years. Although Chu Xiu's way of doing things was criticized by the martial arts forces in the Guanxi area, as long as Chu Xiu did not die, the martial arts forces in the Guanxi area would not dare to provoke Chu Xiu's dignity. The two largest clans in the Guanxi area had been completely destroyed by Chu Xiu in one day. The bloodstains on the ground of the Wei and Zhang families' ancestral lands had not been cleaned yet. Who would dare jump out and seek death? Therefore, Chu Xiu was very assured in the Guanxi area. Chu Xiu had never been to the land of West Chu before, but among the three kingdoms, West Chu was the most special. Among the dynasties in the world, as long as there was a split, there would be one land of West Chu. Although it might not be called West Chu, this also proved that the land of West Chu was the most unstable and difficult to unify. The reason was very simple. The land of West Chu had the feeling of a barren land with undeveloped forests everywhere. There were even some fierce beasts that had survived since ancient times. 80% of the West Chu area was not suitable for humans to live in. Only a few powerful and confident large sects would establish a sect in this kind of place. They wanted peace and quiet, as well as the rich cultivation resources there. Because there were few people, the power of the West Chu imperial court was not large, but the martial arts were flourishing. Although it could not compare to the Eastern Qi, it was a bit stronger than the Northern Yan. The martial arts were flourishing while the imperial court was weak. Over the years, the West Chu imperial court rarely participated in the struggle between the three countries. Most of the time, when the Eastern Qi was strong, they would ally with the Northern Yan to suppress the Eastern Qi. But when the Eastern Qi suffered a loss, West Chu would immediately retreat, as if they did not have any initiative. In reality, it was not that West Chu did not want to fight, but it was impossible for West Chu to attack the Central Plains with their strength. Being able to maintain the current situation was not an easy matter for West Chu. The official road to West Chu was a little narrow. Along the way, Chu Xiu saw many warriors with swords in a hurry. It was obvious that they were preparing to participate in the World Sword Sect Conference. The World Sword Sect Conference was only held once every 100 years. Not only would the young generation of swordsmen compete with each other, there would also be grandmaster-level swordsmen sparring with each other. There would also be sword grandmasters from various large sects giving public lectures. It could be said that as long as the rogue warriors went, they would definitely not be at a disadvantage. And this time, the World Sword Sect Conference had opened its conditions to the public. All the people of the pugilistic world could come and watch the ceremony. This attracted even more warriors to come and join in the fun. Chu Xiu went straight to the Jianghu prefecture, which was not far from Floating Jade Mountain. Mei Qinglian had already informed Mr. Liu of the Phaseless Demon sect. If Mr. Liu arrived, he would naturally come and inform him. Holding the invitation for the World Sword Sect Conference, Chu Xiu went straight to the Sword Deviate Pavilion of the Jianghu prefecture. The Sword Separation Pavilion could be considered as a combination of a restaurant and an inn. However, one could tell from its name that it would only serve the people of Jianghu. During the period of the World Sword Sect competition, the Sword Separation Pavilion would only serve sword cultivators. The other non-sword cultivators would only be qualified to enter if they had the invitation to the World Sword Sect competition. As for the other rogue cultivators, they could only be rejected. After all, although the Sword Separation Pavilion was big, it had limited space. Although this would attract some criticism, no one dared to cause trouble. This was because the Sword Deviate Pavilion was the business of the Forgotten Sword Hut. Among the 5 major sword sects, the Forgotten Sword Hut's strength was definitely at the forefront. The warriors of the Forgotten Sword Hut cultivated the way of the sword. They comprehended sword intent, understood the principles of the sword, and practiced sword techniques. They progressed step by step and had an incomparably solid foundation. Therefore, from the day the Forgotten Sword Hut was established, it had always been one of the 5 major sword sections. In history, it was either the head of the 5 major sword sects or it was in the middle. In any case, it had never been like the Yu Palace. When it was glorious, it was incomparably powerful, but when it declined, it was beyond recognition. The strength of the Forgotten Sword Hut had always been very stable. Moreover, in this World Sword Sect Conference, the Forgotten Sword Hut was also the existence with the most ability to become the head of the 5 major sword sections. In front of the Sword Deviate Pavilion, 2 disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut, dressed in white and holding swords, cupped their hands towards Chu Xiu and said, "Friend, if you are not a sword cultivator, please show the invitation of the World Sword Sect to enter the Sword Deviate Pavilion." The attitude of these 2 warriors from the Forgotten Sword Hut could be considered to be very polite. After all, during the World Sword Sect Conference, countless experts came and went. The 5 major sword sects did not want to cause trouble, so the disciples they sent out to receive him were smooth and slick people. They would not cause any misunderstandings because of their attitude. Chu Xiu handed over the invitation. One of the disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut looked at it and immediately cupped his hands. "So it is the official Chu of the Guanzhong torture room. Please enter." As he spoke, the disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut immediately said in a loud voice, "The representative of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu, official Chu, has arrived." As he spoke, a disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut immediately walked out and led Chu Xiu into the Sword Deviate Pavilion. This was not because the disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut had a good attitude and good service. It was because they had no other choice. During this time, many warriors had come to the Sword Deviate Pavilion. Some had enmity between them, some had enmity between sects, and there were even countless who did not like each other. As a warrior, it was almost impossible to find someone with a good temper. Fighting was a common thing. Over the past few days, countless warriors had fought many times over a seat. Thus, the warriors of the Forgotten Sword Hut had learned their lesson. As long as someone came with an invitation, the people of the Forgotten Sword Hut would arrange a seat for them. This was to prevent them from fighting over a seat. At this time, there were also many warriors in the Sword Deviate Pavilion looking at Chu Xiu. Other than the warriors of Eastern Qi, the others only glanced at Chu Xiu before looking away. Although Chu Xiu was from the Northern Yan, he could only be considered a minor figure in the Northern Yan. He had never been to West Chu before, so the people of these 2 places had only heard rumors about Chu Xiu. On the other hand, in Eastern Qi, Chu Xiu's reputation was great. Just as the disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut had arranged a seat for Chu Xiu, a middle-aged warrior sitting across from Chu Xiu slammed the table and snorted coldly. Chapter 373. Some people had friends all over the world, such as young Marquis Wen Lu Fengxian. Others had enemies all over the world. They were referring to Chu Xiu. The middle-aged martial artist who had slammed the table was at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. On his back were 2 long swords, one red and one blue. He showed undisguised malice to Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu only felt that he looked familiar. He couldn't remember who he was. The forgetful Sword Hut disciple who had brought Chu Xiu in slapped his head helplessly. This kind of thing had happened more than once or twice in the past few days. Each time, the forgetful Sword Hut had to come and mediate. As disciples of the forgetful Sword Hut, they were already annoyed. Just as the Forgotten Sword Hut disciple was about to speak, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You have a grudge against me? But there are many people who want to cause trouble for me in this world. If you want to cause trouble for me, then tell me your name first. Otherwise, I won't recognize who you are." When Chu Xiu said this, everyone present was stunned. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as this. Just how many people had Chu Xiu offended that he couldn't even remember who his enemies were? The middle-aged man's expression was also frighteningly gloomy. In reality, he didn't want to cause trouble for Chu Xiu this time. This was the territory of the Forgotten Sword Hut. He had to give the Forgotten Sword Hut face. Also, before he came, his master had instructed that he had to keep a low profile during this World Sword Sect conference. Otherwise, he would have started making things difficult the moment Chu Xiu entered. In the end, the Forgotten Sword Hut disciple had unintentionally brought Chu Xiu to his side. This way, he could no longer ignore him. That was why he slammed the table and snorted. However, he had never expected that Chu Xiu didn't even know who he was. The middle-aged martial artist gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Azure Water Sword Sect, Do Guangchen. Chu Xiu, are you purposely humiliating my Azure Water Sword Sect? You crippled my junior. I will settle this debt with you sooner or later." Chu Xiu slapped his head. Only now did he remember who this person was. After all, Do Guangchen had once brought people to surround him on Shangmang Mountain. However, Chu Xiu hadn't met Do Guangchen face to face. He had only seen him a few times from afar, so he couldn't remember. Leisurely sitting down, Chu Xiu indifferently said, "Shen Bai is a character. Although he was defeated by me, he is stronger than you. If it was Shen Bai, if he didn't want to kill me, then he wouldn't be blowing his beard and glaring at me, making such a useless gesture. On the other hand, if Shen Bai wanted to kill me, he wouldn't care whether or not this was the territory of the Forgetting Sword Hut. He would come directly with his sword. Now that Shen Bai has been crippled by me, your Azure Water Sword Sect doesn't even have a worthy disciple. This is truly lamentable. You are the eldest Xixiang, yet you don't even have Shen Bai's boldness. Your master should be very disappointed with you, right?" Do Guangchen indeed didn't want to make a move. Azure Water Sword Sect was currently at a low point, and he knew that his master was treating Shen Bai. His junior still had a chance of survival. Therefore, when he came to participate in the World Sword Sect conference, Lu Gongyuan had already told him to endure and keep a low profile. This time, Azure Water Sword Sect was just a formality. Needless to say, Chu Xiu's mouth was vicious. With just a few words, Do Guangchen was infuriated. In fact, what truly provoked him was when Chu Xiu said that he was inferior to Shen Bai and made Lu Gongyuan disappointed. The entire Azure Water Sword Sect knew that Lu Gongyuan used all of Azure Water Sword Sect's resources to nurture Shen Bai. This was something that Lu Gongyuan tacitly agreed to as a senior and didn't have any jealousy or dissatisfaction. He could accept these things, but he couldn't allow outsiders to say it. The two long swords on Do Guangchen's back were unsheathed at the same time. The chilling ice sword Qi and the scarlet flame sword Qi fused together. Fire and water were incompatible, but for Do Guangchen, they complemented each other and their prowess was extraordinary. Back when Chu Xiu was at the physical invulnerability realm, he could only dodge like a mouse when facing Do Guangchen, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm. Now that he was facing the so-called unity of heaven and man realm, Chu Xiu's mental state had a clear change. The so-called unity of heaven and man was nothing more than this. It wasn't like he hadn't killed before. Chu Xiu sat still and formed the Great Vajra seal. Because he cultivated the Great Vajra divine powers, when Chu Xiu executed Buddhist martial arts, his Dipper Qi actually had a trace of Buddha's golden radiance. It was as though he truly had the might of a Vajra. There was a loud bang, and Do Guangchen's sword light was torn apart. Chu Xiu's figure remained unmoved, but Do Guangchen took 3 steps back, and the chair under his feet was directly shattered. The commotion from their side was too big, and everyone present looked towards Do Guangchen and Chu Xiu. All of their faces revealed a surprised expression. It might not be a new thing for a young elite on the Longhu rankings to defeat a senior martial artist, but Do Guangchen was still a well-known figure. He was the mainstay of the Azure Water Sword Sect, and Lu Gongyuan's first disciple. Now that he was so easily defeated by Chu Xiu, it seemed like he was a little too useless. In fact, Do Guangchen was accepted as a disciple by Lu Gongyuan in the past, and he was only second to Lu Gongyuan in the Azure Water Sword sect. Dou Guangchen wasn't mediocre, but Chu Xiu was a little too strong. After cultivating the great Vajra divine powers, Chu Xiu could be considered to have made up for his last shortcoming. In the eyes of martial artists of the same rank, the current Chu Xiu was simply invulnerable. With a strong and profound inner force, coupled with the spiritual force that wasn't considered strong, but definitely wasn't weak either. Finally, after cultivating the great Vajra divine powers, Chu Xiu was almost invincible within the 5 Chi's origin realm. Even among the martial artists at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, Chu Xiu was confident that he could defeat most of them. Just as Dou Guangchen flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to continue attacking, and when Chu Xiu revealed his killing intent, a long sword that was completely condensed by the power of ice suddenly descended and stood upright in front of Chu Xiu and Dou Guangchen. This long sword was completely condensed by the water vapor in the air. It could be said that it was a sword formed by the power of heaven and earth. It was needless to say what kind of status one had to have to achieve this. A figure walked down from upstairs and looked at the scene below. In a cold voice, he said, "Have you all fought enough? If you want to fight, wait until the World Sword Sect Conference begins. My Sword Separation Pavilion is not a place for you to settle your personal grudges." The martial artist who walked down had a monstrous aura around him. He was impressively a martial arts grandmaster. Furthermore, his appearance was also very strange. He was in his 40s and had slanted eyebrows. His face was slouched and he had a naturally bitter look. It was hard for people to not be able to hold back their laughter when they saw him. However, although this person in front of them looked a little funny, no one dared to laugh in front of him. This person's temper was notoriously bad. He was the master of the Sitting Sword Hut's South Sword Peak, painstaking sword, Yan Bujue. He could be said to be a strange freak. The disciples of the Sitting Sword Hut had a calm temperament and had always had a good reputation in the martial world. However, Yan Bujue was the exact opposite. He could not get along with anyone and his temper was also abnormally violent. In his early years, he had offended many people. If he had not been taken in by the Sitting Sword Hut, Yan Bujue would most likely have been beaten to death. However, even after joining the Sitting Sword Hut, Yan Bujue's temper did not change. He was still overbearing and strong. When the Sitting Sword Hut dealt with outsiders, it was inevitable that they would use a carrot and a stick. This Yan Bujue was that big stick. Chu Xiu spread out his hands and said, "Senior Yan, everyone here is watching. I did not make the first move. Of course, if some people are not convinced and want to go out and fight again, I, Chu Xiu, will accompany them to the end." Chapter 374. Late at night, in the guest room of the Sword Separation Pavilion, a knocking sound came from outside Chu Xiu's door. Chu Xiu opened the door. An unfamiliar middle-aged man in white stood there and said softly, "It's me." Hearing this voice, Chu Xiu immediately realized that this person was Mr. Lu. Chu Xiu said in surprise, "This is the Sword Separation Pavilion, the territory of the Forgetful Sword Hut. Mr. Lu, aren't you afraid of something happening by appearing here so openly?" Mr. Lu closed the door and chuckled. He pointed at his face and said, "If I didn't even have this little ability, my phaseless demon sect would have been exterminated countless times already. Don't worry, even if Yan Bubu stood in front of me, he wouldn't be able to see any flaws. My current identity is a standard righteous person, a wandering cultivator from Shangyang of Eastern Qi, Pine Wave Sword, Su Songtao." Chu Xiu said with some curiosity, "Then what about the real Su Songtao?" Mr. Lu casually waved his hand and said, "Of course he's dead. He's dead to the point where not even dregs are left." Chu Xiu nodded and didn't say anything. The methods of the demonic path had always been this ruthless. He, Chu Xiu, who was pretending to be a descendant of the demonic path, naturally wouldn't be any better. Although Mr. Lu's attitude towards him was very polite and amiable, in reality, as an expert of the phaseless demon sect, Mr. Lu was definitely the kind of demonic path villain who killed without blinking an eye. Waving his hand, Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu with a strange gaze and said, "I didn't expect that you actually have a relationship with the Holy Maiden. She already told me before that you will be participating in the Demonic Paths Alliance meeting on behalf of the Shadow Demon sect. Such a good thing has fallen onto your head. Don't tell me you've joined the Shadow Demon sect." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Of course not. It's just that there's no one in the Shadow Demon sect at the moment, and the Holy Maiden is busy, so she asked me to make this trip." "Right, Mr. Lu, is the Holy Maiden very strong in the Shadow Demon sect? Is his identity very special?" Mr. Lu said, "Martial masters are naturally very powerful. Moreover, it's not that the Saintess identity is special, but the Yin demon ancestor's identity is special. In the past, among the sects attached to the Kunlun devil cult, the Yin demon sect's relationship with the Kunlun devil cult is one of the closest. Even the Yin demon sect's sect master and saintess can become the devil envoys of the Kunlun devil cult. Their status is even higher than my phaseless demon sect. However, in recent years, the Yin demon sect had been more or less annihilated by the righteous sections. Moreover, because of a traitor, the Yin demon sect had almost been destroyed. Now, only the saintess was left. However, even if the Holy Maiden was the only one left, as long as the inheritance of the Yin demon sect existed, her status would still be there. The saintess once helped me in the past, so I definitely won't let you suffer a loss during this Demonic Path Alliance meeting. Pack up, you can follow me to the Bonewood Villa now. However, you have to conceal your identity and change it to a demonic path's identity. In recent years, the demonic path has become somewhat impure. There might be some traitors mixed in. The Yin demon sect was almost destroyed because of a traitor. Your identity in the Jianghu is not bad. No one will suspect that the Guangzhong torture room's torture officer is a descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. Therefore, you have to conceal your identity well to avoid being recognized and causing unnecessary trouble." Chu Xiu nodded. He knew this even without Mr. Lu saying it. These days, even the righteous paths people could not be trusted, let alone those evil and ruthless demonic paths people. Because of Mr. Lu's relationship with the phaseless demon sect, as long as Chu Xiu used his identity as the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, Mr. Lu would not harm him. However, other sects that did not have a close relationship with the Kunlun devil cult, or even the bright demon sect that had betrayed the Kunlun devil cult in the past, could do anything. Chu Xiu took out a mask with the Blue Dragon Society's symbol on it and put it on. He changed into a hoarse and deep voice and said, "I am a newcomer of the demonic path, Lin Yi. Nice to meet you, Mr. Lu." A playful smile appeared on Mr. Lu's face as he said, "The Blue Dragon Society's black iron mask? This is a pretty good item. However, it's best if you don't use those more conspicuous martial arts. Otherwise, people will be able to deduce your identity." After leaving the sword separation pavilion, Chu Xiu followed Mr. Lu to the Bone Tree Villa. The so-called Bone Tree Villa was actually a deserted villa. Its name was very strange, but its origin was even more terrifying. Legend has it that the master of the Bone Tree Villa was a righteous hero. In the end, because he cultivated a demonic path's secret technique, he went berserk. He had to use human blood and flesh to concoct pills in order to maintain his vitality. Therefore, this righteous hero used his reputation to invite many people of the Jianghu to the Bone Tree Villa as guests. In the end, none of those people of the Jianghu walked out of the Bone Tree Villa alive. Moreover, apart from using the flesh and blood of those who were killed to concoct pills, their bones were also used as materials to reinforce the entire Bone Tree Villa. This was also the origin of the so-called Bone Tree Villa. It was said that because the master of the Bone Tree Villa was exposed, he was killed by many righteous heroes. The Bone Tree Villa was also completely deserted. However, because there were too many people who died here, the flesh and blood of those who died unjustly were used to concoct pills, and their bones were used as materials. Therefore, every midnight, the Bone Tree Villa would be filled with the cries of wronged ghosts. It was very terrifying. When Chu Xiu followed Mr. Lu to the Bone Tree Villa, he discovered that this place was indeed a bit terrifying. The originally dilapidated villa seemed a bit gloomy and terrifying. The buildings of the Bone Tree Villa were also very strange. They were either pitch black in color, or a strange grayish-white color. Looking at them gave people a strange feeling. When they were approaching the Bone Tree Villa, Mr. Lu said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, "Chu, you are a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. However, you have not had any dealings with the current demonic path. The current relationship between demonic paths is more complicated than in the past. However, you don't need to care about this. All you need to know is that you are a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult, and your status is more respected than most people. You are the representative of the Yin demon sect, and the people standing behind you are also more powerful than most people. That is enough. The bright devil lineage is not on good terms with my Immortal lineage. This group of people betrayed the Holy Church in exchange for an ignoble existence. Although they have accumulated a lot of strength over the years, my Immortal lineage is not weak in the dark. To resist external forces, we must first stabilize the internal forces. This so-called demonic path alliance is actually a plot within the demonic path before we can unite against the external forces." Chu Xiu nodded. He was very good at using the tiger's skin as a flag. Even without Mr. Lu's teaching, Chu Xiu understood this. As they walked into the Bone Tree Villa, two black-clothed martial artists with the three-flower realm cultivation suddenly appeared and shouted, "Who are you?" Mr. Lu threw out two tokens. The two martial artists glanced at them and immediately handed them to Mr. Lu. They cupped their hands and said, "So you are the representatives of the Phaseless Demon sect and the Yin Demon sect. Please come in." Chu Xiu glanced at the two and asked, "Who are the guards?" Mr. Lu said indifferently, "They are from the 6th Demon sect in Hainan. The 6th Demon sect is considered to be neutral in the demonic path. Strictly speaking, it is the Bright Demon sect. However, when my sacred sect was destroyed, the 6th Demon sect did not choose to betray us, nor did they choose to escape. Those righteous sects did not touch them completely because the 6th Demon sect was far away in Hainan, far away from the Central Plains. They did not have much of a presence. When the sacred sect was completely destroyed, they only received the news. Therefore, the 6th Demon sect did not betray the sacred sect. We, the Hidden Demon sect, naturally have no hostility towards them. The 6th Heavenly Demon sect is presiding over this Devil Alliance meeting. Otherwise, if we from the Bright Devil lineage and the Hidden Devil lineage were to sit together, I'm afraid we would start fighting each other before we could even attack the 5 great sword sects." As he spoke, Mr. Lu had already stepped into the Bone Tree Villa with Chu Xiu. At this time, the originally dilapidated Bone Tree Villa had been cleaned up, but the inside was still gloomy and terrifying. In the hall of the Bone Tree Villa, cold and evil demonic chi filled the entire hall. The entire hall was clearly divided into two factions. On one side, there were more people from the Bright Demon sect, while on the other side, there were fewer people from the Hidden Demon sect. When they saw Mr. Lu bringing Chu Xiu in, everyone present turned to look at the two of them. Mr. Lu waved his hand and revealed his original appearance. Only then did many people from the Hidden Demon sect greet Mr. Lu. On the side of the Bright Demon lineage, a martial artist of the unity of heaven and man realm, who was dressed in a colorful robe with strange patterns, suddenly let out a strange laugh and said, "Lu Jin, I heard that your Phaseless Demon sect has already fought with the Hidden Sword Villa and suffered a loss. In the end, you still couldn't get the Demon Sword Eternal Yearning. Are you here for revenge? And who is that beside you? The Demon Dao Alliance is not a place that anyone can participate in. What is the meaning of you bringing a junior martial artist who is only at the 5 Chi's origin realm? Is he here to see the world? This martial artist in the unity of heaven and man realm was dressed strangely, but his appearance was very handsome and bewitching. He was so handsome that people could not tell whether he was a man or a woman. Even his voice carried a gentle aura, giving people goosebumps after hearing it. Mr. Lu's face darkened and he said coldly, "Cho Xiangxi, mind your 5 poison sects business. You have the nerve to ridicule my phaseless demon sect? In the past, your 5 poison sect coveted the sword insects of the storm sword tomb. Did you forget that several of your elders were killed in a single strike? And this person beside me is not a junior martial artist. His name is Lin Yi, and he is the legitimate successor of the Kunlun devil cult. This time, he is representing the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao Alliance. Is this identity not enough?" Hearing this, Cho Xiangxi's face revealed a faint smile and said, "He is representing the Holy Maiden of the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao Alliance? Since when did the Shadow Demon sect have a man? This kid can't be that woman's lover, right?" Chapter 375. There were plenty of people with foul mouths everywhere. Chu Xiu wouldn't be angered by a single sentence from the other party. Hearing that, Chu Xiu only transmitted his voice to Mr. Lu in an unusually calm manner. "Who is this?" Mr. Lu sneered, "5 poison sects young master Shan Yin, Cho Xiangxi. He's already so old, not much younger than me, yet he's still pretending to be a young master here. He's been relying on the symbiotic poison goo to maintain his appearance. In the past, he once pursued the Holy Maiden, but with her strength, how could she take a fancy to such trash? Now that the Holy Maiden is in existence at the martial grandmaster level, she's long left this guy behind." Hearing that, Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. He looked at Cho Xiangxi and said indifferently, "My relationship with the Holy Maiden doesn't need a thing that's neither a man nor a woman like you to worry about. I heard that you once pursued the Holy Maiden with a thick face. Please clarify whether you're male or female first." Chu Xiu's words were extremely vicious, directly stabbing Cho Xiangxi's handsome face. "Arrogant junior. You're courting death." Cho Xiangxi fiercely slammed the chair, his figure turning into a stream of light, directly rushing towards Chu Xiu. Before Chu Xiu's arrival, the bright demons and Yin Mo had already quarreled several times. However, they did not make a move, but the smell of gunpowder was already very strong. That was why Cho Xiangxi had directly opened his mouth to ridicule Mr. Lu when he first came in. Now that it had escalated to the level of fighting, it was very normal. At the very least, there was no reaction from the bright demon lineage and Yin Mo lineage. Mr. Lu snorted coldly and was about to make a move, but he was stopped by Chu Xiu. Among the martial artists present, there were martial grandmaster level experts, and most of the others were unity of heaven and man realm martial artists. Although there were also martial artists below unity of heaven and man realm, they were all junior martial artists responsible for serving tea and water. There really weren't any martial artists like Chu Xiu who came to represent the Yin Demon sect to discuss the alliance meeting. Therefore, everyone wanted to see how good Chu Xiu was, and whether he had the qualifications to represent the Yin Demon sect to participate in this Demon Alliance meeting. Therefore, everyone wanted to see how good Chu Xiu was, and whether he was qualified to represent the Yin Demon sect to participate in this Demon Alliance meeting. Even if Chu Xiu planned on silently joining the Demon Path Alliance meeting as a spectator, he still had to show that he had the qualifications to be a spectator. Moreover, Chu Xiu didn't plan on just being a spectator. At that moment, Cho Xiangxi had already arrived before Chu Xiu. However, in that instant, Cho Xiangxi's figure instantly turned into a ball of rainbow-colored fog, enveloping Chu Xiu within it in an instant. The 5 Poisons cult was born in the 10,000 mountains of the Miaojiang. Although it was not as famous as the moon-worshipping cult, it was also a big demonic sect, one of the 8 sects. On the surface, 5 Poison sect was born in the Miaojiang's 100,000 mountains. Although it was not as famous as moon-worshipping sect, it was still a big demon sect, and was one of the 8 sections. On the surface, it looked like Wuxia Xianxia had unleashed a multicolored poisonous mist, but in reality, there were countless tiny poisonous insects within the poisonous mist, making it seem extremely terrifying. Being shrouded in the poisonous fog, Chu Xiu revealed a cold smile. Because he had to hide his identity, most of Chu Xiu's martial skills could not be used directly. Even his signature Sky Demon dance could only be hidden. Therefore, Chu Xiu's fighting strength was suppressed by at least half. Chu Xiu could feel Wuxia Xianxia's strength the moment he made a move. He was definitely not weak. Even if he could not compare to Mr. Liu, who was a half-step master, he was stronger than his 7th uncle. However, it was a pity that he encountered Chu Xiu. The glazed gold silk goo in Chu Xiu's body had a great restraining effect on poisons, not to mention this kind of poisonous insects. As soon as they got close to Chu Xiu, they were directly suppressed by the glazed gold silk goo's natural superior pressure. They fainted on the ground and were shattered by Chu Xiu's gang qi. Chu Xiu activated the devil qi of the 3 blades of Avicii and combined it with the powerful killing intent of the heaven-extinguishing and earth-destroying oblivion-killing fist. He directly punched out and blasted Wuxia Xianxia, who was hidden in the poisonous fog, away. Wuxia Xianxia retreated several steps. His hands, which had blocked Chu Xiu's punch, could not help but tremble. He looked at Chu Xiu in horror. There was more than one person in Jianghu who knew the heaven-extinguishing and earth-destroying oblivion-killing fist. Chu Xiu was not worried that he would expose this martial skill. Moreover, he had integrated the unique devil qi of the 3 blades of Avicii into it. In the eyes of the outside world, as long as he did not use saber techniques, no one would associate Chu Xiu with his current identity. While Wuxia Xianxia was still in shock, Chu Xiu had already closed in and punched again. The killing intent shocked the scene, and a cold chill directly shot up to the sky. Everyone present looked at each other with strange eyes. Where did this rising star of the devil Dao named Lin Yi come from? His identity was not simple at all. This powerful killing intent and evil aura was something that ordinary warriors who cultivated step by step would not be able to achieve. How many people did this guy kill to achieve this level of cultivation? However, the crowd did not delve into it, especially the people from the Yinma clan. They were chased by the righteous sects almost every day. It was normal for them to change their identities. Even they did not trust themselves. One could imagine how many fake identities they had to create in order to prevent themselves from being chased by the righteous sections. Now it seemed that Lin Yi was the same. He should be a well-known figure in Jianghu. At this moment, when Wuxia Xianxia saw that Chu Xiu, a junior warrior who was inferior to him, actually dared to pursue him relentlessly, his devilishly handsome face became distorted. He stretched out one hand, and the 5-colored poisonous gas continuously swirled around his fingers. As his hands danced, the 5-colored threads that filled the sky instantly turned into an inescapable net under the support of his inner force, enveloping Chu Xiu. Each of the 5 poison sects' 5 poison gang qi had the power to poison warriors of the same level to death. The most terrifying thing was that the 5 kinds of poisonous gas could be arranged at will, and their attributes were also different. It could be said that the 5 poison gang qi cultivated by every warrior of the 5 poison sect was different. The 5 poison silk hand that Wuxia Xianxia displayed was his unique secret technique. Apart from using his own gang qi to resist it, there was almost no way to break it. As long as one came into contact with a trace of it, the poison would immediately enter the heart meridian. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands, and a strange gang qi enveloped his body. Half of it was Buddhist light, and the other half was an incomparably evil and monstrous demonic aura. The Buddhist light and demonic aura combined, forming an evil phantom behind Chu Xiu. It was clearly dignified, but the demonic flames were monstrous. Great Vajra divine powers, Mara Vajra form. Chu Xiu had already started cultivating the Great Vajra divine powers while he was recuperating. Now, Chu Xiu's great Vajra divine powers was only at the beginner level. Naturally, he was unable to condense his own Dharma form. However, Chu Xiu chose a few Dharma forms that were more suitable for him to imitate and cultivate. Among those who cultivated the great Vajra divine powers, there were Buddhist monks, but there were also Buddhist scum. The Buddhist warrior who cultivated the Mahavajra form was one of them. He had resentment in his heart, which resulted in him being unable to condense his own Dharma form. Therefore, he directly turned from Buddhism to the demonic. He did not expect that he would successfully cultivate the Mahavajra form by chance. Chu Xiu also cultivated both Buddhism and demonic. Therefore, after obtaining the Mahavajra form, he quickly succeeded in cultivating it without any hesitation. As soon as the Mahavajra form appeared, Chu Xiu stepped forward, allowing the inescapable net condensed by the 5 poisoned silk hand to fall on his body. However, they were all strangled by the Buddhist light and demonic aura. As the palm fell, the demonic flames were monstrous, and the Buddhist light was scorching. The two forces mixed together and fell on Zhou Xiangzi's head. The power was incomparably powerful, immediately causing everyone in the lobby to look sideways. The power of Chu Xiu's palm was enough to be shocking among the warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm. Although this man was at the 5 Qis collecting in the origin realm, his strength was already comparable to the unity of heaven and man realm. At least, there were not many people present who were confident that they could defeat Chu Xiu. The way Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu was also very strange. Only a short period of time had passed, and Chu Xiu had already grown to such a realm. Could it be that the heavens were really blessing the sacred sect, and that the younger generation had also produced such an astonishing and supreme powerhouse? The Buddhist lineage had Wisdom King Zongxian, the Tao lineage had Little Celestial Master Zhang Chengzhen, and the sword lineage also had Chief Sword Fang Qi Shao. Now, the Devil Tao lineage had produced Chu Xiu. Although he could only hide his identity now, if there were no problems with Chu Xiu's future development, Mr. Lu believed that Chu Xiu would definitely grow to be an existence that could rival the 3 of them. At this moment, in the arena, facing Chu Xiu's Buddhist light mixed with demonic aura, Zhou Xiangzi threw out a strange ice silkworm from his sleeve. The violent 5 poison gang qi was injected into the ice silkworm, and in an instant, the ice silkworm expanded by a size. It spat out endless cold air, which turned into countless ice crystals in front of Zhou Xiangzi. This was the mystical ice goo that Zhou Xiangzi had refined in the far north wastelands. For this, he had even fought with the people of the far north fluttering snow city. The mystical ice goo could transform any power into the power of mystical ice. Once the mystical ice goo entered one's body, it would immediately freeze the person's meridians and true qi. It was extremely terrifying, but now it could only be used for defense. However, Chu Xiu's Mahavajra form was powerful and heavy. The great Vajra divine strength was supported by the power of the Dharma form, and it was definitely a top-notch body tempering technique. As the palm fell, cracks appeared on the large area of ice crystals. The Buddhist light and demonic aura exploded, and in an instant, all the ice crystals shattered. The mystical ice goo also exploded. Zhou Xiangzi roared angrily. That was the mystical ice goo that he had spent several years to refine. However, before Zhou Xiangzi could react, Chu Xiu had already formed a seal with both hands, and the Mahavajra form behind him was replaced by the dignified Dharma Guardian Wisdom King. As the fist fell, the Buddhist light instantly shone brightly, suppressing evil and slaying demons. Hell suppressing Wisdom King form. Amidst the explosion of the Buddhist light, Zhou Xiangzi was blasted back several steps, and a stream of blood flowed from his mouth. What was even more bizarre was that his face was constantly twisting, as if there were countless goo worms swimming under his skin. In an instant, his appearance actually aged by several decades, from a young man in his 20s to an old man in his 60s or 70s. He looked even older than Mr. Lu. Pointing at Chu Xiu, Zhou Xiangzi roared, "Buddhist technique. He's a spy sent by the Buddhist sects." Chapter 376. Wuxia Xianxia used his wide sleeves to cover his face. He looked at Chu Xiu with a gaze filled with venomous hatred. He didn't hate Chu Xiu for defeating him, but he hated Chu Xiu for using a Buddhist technique to shake up the poisonous insects in his body, making it impossible for him to maintain his youthful appearance. Wuxia Xianxia valued his face immensely. Destroying his face was more painful than killing him. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Those who practice Buddhist techniques are spies of Buddhism. If I practice poison techniques, would I still be a member of your 5 poison sect?" Mr. Liu also sneered and said, "I've also practiced Taoism's Tai Chi Yin Yang sword. Does that mean I'm also a member of Taoism? You bright demons can walk the Jianghu without worry. If we hidden demons aren't careful, I'm afraid we'd have been eliminated by those righteous Tao long ago." A hint of anger appeared in Wuxia Xianxia's eyes. He wanted to say something, but at this moment, a monk in black who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground and meditating with his eyes closed suddenly said, "All right, we've already fought. Let's not talk about spies and whatnot. Using merit to determine the enemy is what those righteous Tao sects do. The 6th demon sect also practices both Buddhism and demonic Tao. Could it be that the 6th demon sect is also a Buddhist spy?" The monk in black who spoke had the appearance of a middle-aged man. The black robe he wore looked like a kasaya, but at the same time, it didn't. There were all sorts of messy things like hell, lust, demons, and the Western paradise painted on it with golden patterns, making it look extremely evil. He had been fiddling with a string of prayer beads in his hand. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a skull carved from white bones. However, it emitted a jade-like luster, making it look a little strange. Although this black-robed monk had the appearance of a bald monk with a ring scar, no one would think that he was a benevolent Buddhist monk based on his attire. His aura was restrained, but he did not do it on purpose. Judging from the aura he exuded, one could tell that this monk was a martial Tao Grand Master and was not someone to be trifled with. Mr. Liu said to Chu Xiu through telepathy, "He is the martial arts master of the 6th demon sect, Siddhartha Me. He is in charge of the Sky of Lust, one of the 6 great celestial realms of the 6th demon sect. He can trigger inner demons and kill people invisibly. He looks like an ordinary person, but he is an extremely difficult character to deal with." Chu Xiu nodded. He had naturally heard of the 6th demon sect. Its strength was definitely not weak. However, the 6th demon sect was located far away from the Central Plains in the Hainan Sea region. Therefore, its reputation was relatively small. The 6th demon sect cultivates both demons and Buddhists, but in reality, they cultivate evil demonic techniques that counter Buddhists. The 6th demon sect worshipped the demon king of the 6th heaven, who was also known as Devil Luobushuan. His techniques lean towards the spiritual aspect, and in particular, it could trigger the opponent's inner demons, causing them to go berserk and even cripple their cultivation. It was extremely evil and ruthless. Moreover, the martial arts of the 6th heavenly demon sect had a great restraining effect on Buddhist cultivators. Buddhist cultivators placed great emphasis on the cultivation of their mental state. Once their inner demons were aroused, their cultivation would be crippled. Even their Buddhist cultivation would be destroyed, and they would directly fall into the path of demons. Therefore, the 6th demon sect was located far away from the Central Plains and kept a low profile. Otherwise, they would have been annihilated by the joint forces of the Great Light Temple and the Subodhi Monastery. This time, the 6th demon sect acted as the middleman to mediate the conflict between the bright demons and the hidden demons. It was fine for both sides to have conflicts and fight to vent their anger, but it was impossible for them to really get into a fight. Looking at the people around him, Siddhari said calmly, "The people from the Omniscient sect and the Rakshasa sect haven't arrived yet. Everyone, take a break. It won't be too late to argue when they're here. Otherwise, if we end up fighting each other before we even see those from the Orthodox Tao, wouldn't that be a joke?" When the martial arts grandmaster spoke, Wuxia Xianxia could only glare at Chu Xiu hatefully and obediently returned to his seat. At that moment, Chu Xiu also came to a realization. No wonder there were so few martial arts grandmasters in the hall. It turned out that they were afraid that they would not be able to restrain themselves if they fought. Actually, apart from the independent cultivators, the factions that were qualified to participate in the Demon Dao conference this time all had a martial arts grandmaster behind them. However, not all of them could come. This was because if they all came, it would be as Sadari said, and they ended up quarreling. When both sides fought, it would be very easy for them to end up badly injured. That would not be easy to clean up. Therefore, the representatives from both sides were only martial artists at the unity of heaven and man realm. Martial artists at this level were already the backbone of the major factions and had the right to represent their respective sects, just like Mr. Liu and Wuxia Xianxia from before. There were only 3 martial arts grandmasters in the entire hall, 1 each from the Bright Demons, the Hidden Demons, and the 6th Demon sect. One of them was the host and mediator, Sadari. On the Bright Demon side, there was also a middle-aged martial artist in a loose black robe with a shady expression. However, Chu Xiu did not know which sect he was from. When Chu Xiu fought with Wuxia Xianxia just now, he did not speak, and his expression did not even change at all. Clearly, he was not from the 5 Poison sect. On the other hand, the martial arts grandmaster from the Hidden Demon side was very strange. He was actually a slightly sloppy old man in a loose grey robe. From the moment Chu Xiu came in, he had been leaning on the chair with his eyes squinted as if he had not woken up yet, as if he did not care about anything at all. Seeing that things had come to an end, Mr. Liu pulled Chu Xiu over to the old man and bowed respectfully. "Senior Wei, this is the martial artist Lin Yi, who is representing the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao conference. He is a rising star of our Demon Dao, and his strength is extraordinary. Even the Saintess has praised him." As he spoke, Mr. Liu hurriedly said to Chu Xiu, "This is a senior of our Demon Dao, one of the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain, Jade-Face Sky Demon, Wuxia." Chu Xiu bowed to Wuxia, but he could not help but reveal a hint of surprise in his eyes. Speaking of Wuxia, Chu Xiu probably could not remember who he was, but the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain were still very famous. 200 years ago, in the 9th Sky Mountain of Eastern Qi, 5 experts of Demon Dao joined hands and raised a big flag, calling on all the Demon Dao in the world to return to the Kunlun Devil cult and restore the Demon Dao to its former glory. These 5 people were all martial arts grandmasters, and together, they were called the 5 great sky demons. For a while, all the rogue cultivators, Demon Dao martial artists, and some sects of the Hidden Demon sect responded, and their momentum was incomparably great. It actually had the momentum of the Demon Dao. Unfortunately, there was still a huge gap between the righteous Dao and the Demon Dao. Under the cooperation of several big sects of the righteous Dao, 4 of the 5 sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain were killed, and the so-called Demon Dao alliance completely fell apart. That was also the last grand occasion of the Demon Dao. Since then, for 200 years, the Demon Dao had been keeping a low profile. For example, during the God Weapon Conference, the Phaseless Demon sect's attack was considered to be on a relatively large scale. This Jade-Face Sky Demon, Wuxia, was the only survivor of the 5 sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain. However, his lifespan was approaching 300 years, and he was almost at the end of his life. Therefore, there were rumors in the Jianghu that Wuxia was already dead. Unexpectedly, he was still alive, but his appearance was somewhat different from what Chu Xiu had imagined. Wuxia used to be called Jade-Face Sky Demon. He was extremely handsome and elegant, and he did not look like a murderer of the Demon Dao at all. He was clearly a gentleman of the Jianghu. It was said that in the past, Wuxia had a romantic past with the Taoist nun of the Zhenwu sect, the legitimate daughter of the 9 great families, and the sword fairy of the Yunu palace. However, no one except Wuxia knew whether it was a Jianghu rumor or a real thing. Wei Shuya waved his hand lazily and said, "What jade-face sky demon? The wrinkles on this old man's face are enough to kill a fly." "Jade face? Little baby boy, you're quite good. Since you were chosen by that plum blossom, you definitely wouldn't be wrong." That girl was extremely proud and arrogant. If there wasn't a suitable candidate, she would rather not participate in this demonic path alliance meeting. Go back and save your strength. In a while, you'll have to fight with those people on the other side. But you don't have to be afraid. This old man is going to die soon. Whether they want to play dirty or not, I'll play with them. Wei Shuya did not hide his words. He said it in front of the bright demon lineage. It was obvious that he was referring to them. On the side of the bright demon lineage, the warrior shrouded in a black robe snorted coldly, but he did not say anything. He pulled Chu Xiu to the side and sat down. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Who's that martial arts grandmaster from the bright demon lineage?" Mr. Lu said expressionlessly, "His background is not simple. He's Mountain Ghost, one of the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult. You should have heard of him." Chu Xiu nodded and a strange look appeared in his eyes. Of course, he knew this name. This was a big shot. The Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult's power was so great that it had almost become the #1 sect in the Demon Dao. Even when the Kunlun devil cult's demonic power swallowed the heavens and suppressed the entire Jianghu, the moon-worshipping cult only chose to follow and not submit. Therefore, after the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the moon-worshipping cult managed to escape in time and was not implicated. Moreover, the moon-worshipping cult had countless powerhouses. On the surface, there were already more than 10 martial arts grandmasters, which could be compared to the Great Light Temple or the Celestial Master Mansion of Longhu Mountain. The top 3 powerhouses of the moon-worshipping cult were the sect leader, the high priest, and the witch. The witch's status was similar to that of Mei Qinglianzin demon sect saintess, second only to the sect leader. Other than these 3, the strongest ones in the moon-worshipping cult were the 9 god Magispriests. They were named after the 9 ghost gods in the legends of the ancient Miaojiang. They were the East Emperor Tai, Lord Yun Zhongjuan, Great Lord Si Ming, Young Lord Si Ming, Lord Xiang, Lady Xiang, Lord Dong, River Earl, and Mountain Ghost. These 9 were the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult. Names were no longer important to them. From the moment they inherited the title of god magi, they were called by this name. Mountain Ghost could only be ranked last among the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult, but he was still qualified to represent the moon-worshipping cult in the Demon Dao Conference. One could imagine the overall strength of the moon-worshipping cult. Chapter 377. Chu Xiu sat with Mr. Lu and waited. He was also observing the demonic Dao warriors in the hall. Compared to the Bright Demon clan, the Hidden Demon clan was indeed much shabbier. There were very few big forces like the Phaseless Demon sect. Most of them were small forces of 2s and 3s. Although their high-end forces were not weak, they could not be gathered to a large scale. Thus, Mr. Lu did not give Chu Xiu too much of an introduction. However, this did not mean that the Hidden Demon clan was weak. The Hidden Demon clan was called the Hidden Demon clan when they hid in the dark. Before they truly surfaced, who knew how strong the Hidden Demon clan was? Take Chu Xiu for example. Although he was the successor of the demonic Dao, his original identity was not weak. The Hidden Demon clan members present were the same. Perhaps they had some status in the Jianghu. And the most important thing was that there were many old monsters like Wei Shuya who dared to fight against the righteous sects in the Hidden Devil clan. Who knew whether those famous diabolism tycoons were dead or still hiding in the dark? The crowd waited for less than an hour. At this time, the people from the Rakshasa sect and the Omniscient sect also arrived. The Rakshasa sect was located in the far west desert, close to the western region. All the disciples of the Rakshasa sect wore a mask of a demon. Legend had it that because of their cultivation method, their appearance was like a demon. There was no difference between wearing a mask and not wearing one. However, the people from the Omniscient sect were a little strange. There were two people from the Omniscient sect. One was at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, and the other was at the Five Chi's origin realm. Normally, if there were martial artists at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm among the people who came, the former would definitely be the leader. However, the people from the Omniscient sect seemed to be the opposite. They actually respected the young man at the Five Chi's origin realm. When they entered, the young man walked in front. There was only one seat for each force. The young man directly sat on the seat of the Omniscient sect. The martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm stood to the side like a follower. Seeing this, everyone present frowned and looked at the young man from the Omniscient sect. The young man had a masculine and handsome appearance. He wore a loose black robe, and one could vaguely see a ferocious blood-red dragon tattoo on his chest. He also held a blood-red dragon spear in his hand, looking incomparably ferocious. A martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm would be considered an expert no matter where he went. He was the backbone of a force. It wasn't easy for them to recruit one, but it was a short-lived ghost. This was why Jianghu was so presumptuous and ridiculing the extreme evil sect now. Of course, the deeper reason was that the Scarlet Drill Demon sect had an old grudge with the extreme evil sect. The grudge between the Bright Devil lineage and the Hidden Devil lineage was no less than that of the Orthodox sections. This time, if it wasn't for the Sixth Demon sect acting as a middleman, they would probably have to fight it out first to determine the outcome. The Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artist from the extreme evil sect revealed a trace of anger on his face. Just as he was about to make a move, the young man had already stood up lazily. Holding the blood-colored dragon spear in his hand, he said plainly, "You asked me why I'm sitting here? I'm not good with words, and it's too troublesome to explain. The blood dragon in my hand will tell you the answer." "Oh right, I'm not that kid, I'm Xianxia. Extreme evil sects Xianxia." Jianghu sneered disdainfully and said, "Never heard of you." Xianxia dragged the blood-colored dragon spear on the ground. His eyes strangely turned vertical, and the color of his eyes turned scarlet, like some kind of snake. "You will remember this in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia's figure turned into a blood-colored ray of light and attacked Jianghu. The dragon on the blood-colored dragon spear roared, and in an instant, the dragon's aura shook the sky. Jianghu brandished the scarlet long saber in his hand, and the blood-red light condensed into a towering saber light that slashed horizontally. A similarly powerful aura erupted, and it was incomparably sharp. There were also traces of black qi within it, which was the poisonous corpse qi. The martial arts of the Scarlet Drill Demon sect mainly focused on condensing the incomparably ferocious blood qi and the strange corpse qi to attack the enemy. Its power was not weak at all. However, Xianxia's spear did not seem to be special in any way. The only special thing was that the power of his spear was really strong, and it was not weaker than the power of a Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artist. He had the right to sit there. However, the moment Xianxia struck with his spear, Wei Shuya, who was originally sleepy, suddenly opened his eyes. A frightening ray of light appeared in his old and muddy eyes. With a loud bang, the scarlet spear radiance collided with the scarlet saber radiance, causing a violent shockwave to erupt. Something unexpected happened. Jianghu's saber radiance was shattered, completely suppressed by Xianxia in terms of power. The scarlet dragon spear in Xianxia's hand smashed down like a heavy hammer. The powerful aura was like Mount Tai, and it directly hit Jianghu, causing him to vomit blood and retreat. The ground under his feet cracked inch by inch. At this moment, everyone finally understood that there was indeed nothing special about Xianxia's martial arts. The only thing special about him was his power. God knows how he, a martial artist at the Five Chi's origin realm, managed to cultivate to this level of power. Even among the unity of heaven and man realm martial artists, there were not many who could be on par with him. Xianxia had no intention of stopping after making Jianghu vomit blood in just 2 moves. The blood dragon in his hand flew out, and the long spear seemed to have come to life. It twisted and danced in the air, and it really looked like a dragon that was about to devour someone. It stabbed toward Jianghu. Jianghu roared, and the long saber in his hand suddenly disintegrated. Countless scarlet saber light merged into it, and the saber slashed down, and Xianxia's spear missed its target. However, whether it was a coincidence or on purpose, the moment the long spear missed its target, a scarlet gang chi suddenly erupted, and it actually went straight for Chu Xiu. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. This Xianxia of the omniscient sect was really arrogant to the extreme. If Jianghu was not enough to establish his dominance, did he want to use me as well? At that moment, Chu Xiu's eyes burst with a bright light, and he displayed the heaven's sun gazing at air technique. The trajectory of the spear was clearly visible in Chu Xiu's eyes. When the blood dragon spear was about to reach him, Chu Xiu took a step forward, and his figure casually dodged the spear. His palm turned into a saber, and the surging devil chi condensed in Chu Xiu's palm. He directly slashed down with the saber, and the spear was directly sent flying back toward Xianxia. Everyone present could even hear the howling of a beast coming from the long spear. The gang chi in Xianxia's hand exploded, and he caught the spear that Chu Xiu had slashed back at him. When they collided, there was a violent explosion of gang chi. Although Xianxia did not take a step back, one could imagine how strong Chu Xiu was. Looking at Chu Xiu, Xianxia raised his eyebrows. It seemed that someone had already established his dominance before coming here, and his strength was not weak at all. At this time, Wei Shuya half opened his eyes, and said slowly, "You actually refined the flood dragon's inner core of the omniscient sect? It seems that you have also learned the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra? Impressive. The omniscient sect has been thinking about this for hundreds of years, and it has actually succeeded in your generation. The young people of the Immortal clan are not weak, and it seems that the Bright Demon clan is not weak either. You have established your dominance, go back and sit down. The fight is over, and it's time to get down to business." Chapter 378. Wei Shuya immediately revealed Xianxia's origins. This caused the expressions of Xianxia and the unity of the heaven realm martial artist from the extreme evil sect to change, but they quickly returned to normal. Their so-called little secrets were not worth mentioning in the eyes of an old antique like Wei Shuya, and he could easily see through them. Everyone present thought for a moment and immediately understood what was going on. The extreme evil sect had not been very strong since its founding, and their cultivation methods were also relatively mediocre. However, a few hundred years ago, the extreme evil sect had accidentally obtained an opportunity. They had dug up the tomb of an ancient powerhouse. However, the commotion at that time had been too great. The omniscient sect had dug up the tomb, but the omniscient sect hadn't been able to get anything good out of it. The truly valuable things had all been snatched away by others who had heard the news. The extreme evil sect only obtained 2 things from that time. One was a blood serpent's core, and the other was the blood serpent's cultivation method, the Blood Serpent Heart Sutra. That's right, it was not a cultivation method for humans, but a cultivation method specifically for vicious beasts to cultivate. This ancient powerhouse was extremely powerful, and he actually kept a blood serpent as a pet. After the blood serpent died, it only left behind a core. Originally, it was possible to refine a vicious beast's core, but the extreme evil sect was not good at alchemy, let alone a high-grade item like the blood serpent's core. They did not feel at ease giving it to others. Therefore, the extreme evil sect master of that generation suddenly had the idea to let his disciples swallow the blood serpent's core. After refining it, they would obtain the bloodline of a flood dragon, and then cultivate the Blood Serpent Heart Sutra. Wouldn't that create a supreme powerhouse? In the end, imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. The blood serpent's core was extremely domineering, and it was not something that ordinary people could refine. As for the blood serpent heart sutra, it was even more so. The meridians of humans were different from vicious beasts, so they specifically researched a cultivation method that was suitable for vicious beasts to cultivate. Conversely, it was impossible for humans to cultivate a cultivation method that was suitable for vicious beasts. After paying with the lives of over 10 young extreme evil sect warriors, the extreme evil sect finally realized how unreliable this matter was. They temporarily put the plan aside and no longer cared about it. Back then, this matter had been laughed at by the martial artists of the Jianghu. They thought that the extreme evil sect was so poor that they had gone crazy and wanted to make humans cultivate a cultivation method for vicious beasts. Who would have thought that the extreme evil sect would actually succeed? Apart from everything else, Xianxia's strength was already extremely terrifying. Not to mention the 5 cheese collecting in origin state, there were probably only a few warriors in the oneness of heaven and men state who could be on par with him. After all, it was the power of the flood dragon. In terms of physical strength, the only one who could really go head-to-head with Xianxia was Wisdom King Zhongxian. Now that everyone had arrived, Siddhartha, who had been sitting in the middle without moving, stood up. He looked at the people on both sides and said in a deep voice with a slight Hainan accent, "Everyone, now that everyone is here, it's time to discuss how to organize the World Sword Sect meeting. This is an open scheme from the 5 great sword sects. At present, the experts from the 5 great sword sects must have gathered on floating Jade Mountain. They must be waiting for us information. We still need to come up with a plan as to how we should handle this matter." Wei Shuya raised his eyelids and said lightly, "The people of the 5 great sword sects bully our demonic path and want to trample on our demonic path's face. What else can we do? One word, fight." Someone beside him reminded him softly, "Senior Wei, those are 2 words." Wei Shuya rolled his eyes at the other party and released an oppressive aura. The aura of the senile Wei Shuya suddenly became like that of an evil dragon that had just woken up. It was incomparably frightening. The cultivator immediately shrank back and did not dare to say anything else. Moon-worshipping cult's god Shaman Mountain Ghost also nodded expressionlessly. "There's no need to say more about this. We have to fight, but how should we fight? Aren't we just courting death by charging forward stupidly like this?" Cho Xiangzi immediately echoed, "Moon-worshipping cult is now the #1 demonic path sect. The cult master's heaven-mending heart sutra has been cultivated to great success. The high priest's illusory demon blood curse can even kill martial arts grandmasters of the same level. It's only appropriate for moon-worshipping cult to lead our demonic path to attack floating Jade Mountain." The 5 Venoms cult and moon-worshipping cult were both located in Miaojiang of West Chu. Both sides were from the bright demon lineage. It could be said that the 5 Venoms cult respected moon-worshipping cult from the very beginning. It was normal for them to support moon-worshipping cult at a time like this. The other bright demons also expressed their agreement. It was not that they were willing to respect moon-worshipping cult, but for the entire bright demon lineage, it was enough as long as they could take the lead. Mr. Lu sneered, "It's not like we have to listen to whoever is stronger. Moon-worshipping cult is strong. Fine, we won't do anything. We'll just watch moon-worshipping cult deal with the 5 great sword sections. Isn't that more appropriate?" Cho Xiangzi slammed the table and shouted coldly, "Lu Jin, stop bickering. This matter concerns the reputation of our entire demonic path. Stop pestering us endlessly." Mr. Lu retorted, "I'm endlessly pestering you? I'm afraid that someone will abuse their authority for personal gain." As the two quarreled, the rest of the bright demons and hidden demons also began to quarrel with each other. For the bright demons, their combined strength was much stronger than Mr. Lu and the others. Since that was the case, it was only right for them to be in command of the attack on floating Jade Mountain. It would be wrong if it was the other way around. As for the warriors of the Hidden Devil clan, they were not at ease to hand over the command to the Bright Devil clan. In the eyes of the hidden demons, the bright demons were traitors. Now that they were handed over to them, would these people still betray them? No one could say for sure. More importantly, who would be in command was a matter of status and face. No one was willing to accept it, so the matter was in a deadlock. No one could do anything to the other. Seeing the two sides quarreling, Mountain Ghost of Moon-worshipping cult waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Stop quarreling. If this goes on, I'm afraid we won't be able to come to a conclusion by the time the World Sword Sect Conference begins. Wei Shuya, the strength of your hidden demons is right there. If you don't let my moon-worshipping cult command this matter, do you want the entire bright demons to listen to you? I know what you're worried about. The past is the past. The destruction of the Kunlun Devil cult was not caused by us. Dugu Weiwei is dead and the Kunlun Devil cult is on the verge of collapse. Do we have to be buried with him and the destruction of the entire demonic path to be worthy of the demonic path? This time, the 5 major sword sects are provoking the entire demonic path. Whether it's my moon-worshipping cult or the entire bright demons, no one will dare to play tricks at this time. You can rest assured." Wei Shuya raised his eyes and looked at Mountain Ghost. He said lightly, "It's fine if you call my name directly, but do you have the right to call Lord Demon Lord's name? Moon-worshipping cult is really getting worse with each generation. With your conduct, do you really think you're the #1 demonic path sect? I know 2 people who inherited the title of Mountain Ghost from your moon-worshipping cult. The first one was blasted into charcoal by the Celestial Master Mansion's Jianghu family with thunder because of his foul mouth. The second one's head was smashed by the monks of the Great Light Temple when they were fighting over some goo insect. Those who inherited the title of Mountain Ghost don't live long. If you continue to be so unruly with your mouth, you might not be able to live longer than your 2 seniors." Hearing this, Mountain Ghost's eyes revealed a hint of anger. He said with a gloomy face, "Wei Shuya, don't flaunt your seniority here. In the past, the 5 people of your 9 heavenly mountain raised their flags and courted death. Not only did they die, but they also implicated a group of demonic path martial artists. What seniority do you have to act in front of me?" Wei Shuya's seemingly old body slowly stood up. The aura around him was like that of a sleeping lion that had just woken up. His aura was extremely terrifying, and he was simply suppressed to the extreme. Sidari wanted to say something, but just as he opened his mouth, he shut it again. He stood to the side as if it had nothing to do with him. Mountain Ghost snorted coldly. Wasn't he going to make a move in the end? He had actually been mentally prepared before he came. Jade Face Heavenly Demon Wei Shuya was indeed famous. Although Mountain Ghost kept saying that the 5 heavenly demons of the 9 heavenly mountain were courting death, in reality, the 5 of them had really gathered countless demonic path experts with a wave of their arms. It also made the righteous path martial arts world see the power of the demonic path. They were not existences that could be easily provoked. It was better to think carefully before shouting the slogan of exterminating demons and defending the righteous path. From then on, the righteous path's killing of the demonic path had indeed slowed down a lot. Although 4 of the 5 heavenly demons of the 9 heavenly mountain had been killed, the righteous path's martial arts world had also paid a price. No one wanted to force out the 5 heavenly demons again. However, no matter how famous they were, that was more than 200 years ago. In the martial arts world, one should not listen to someone who was older. This was the habit of the righteous path sections. In the demonic path, of course, the one with the bigger fist would listen to the one with the bigger fist. Now, Wei Shuya was just an old man whose qi and blood had already declined. The moon-worshipping cult's fist was the biggest. The hill ghost's figure suddenly turned into a black mist that lingered around the entire hall. His figure was like a ghost, completely fusing into the mist. Even Siddhartha was unable to detect the hill ghost's tracks. Each of the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult had their own cultivation method inheritance. It was naturally the same for Mountain Ghost. Within the black fog, the faint wails and howls of evil spirits could be heard. It was as if thousands of evil spirits were imprisoned in it. It was extremely terrifying. The black fog shrank, and a deep ghostly aura suddenly erupted, crushing towards Wuxia. However, Wuxia, who was in the black fog, did not change his expression. He only made one move. He stretched out his right hand and slapped in a certain direction. Boundless devil chi surged out of his body and turned into a palm print that was over 100 feet in size. With a single slap, the mountain ghost was sent flying out of the thick ghost fog. The mountain ghost was directly smashed into the ground, creating a human-shaped hole. Chapter 379. Those who could participate in the demonic alliance meeting were the core forces of the major sections. Some like Mr. Liu had even taken half a step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Therefore, they had naturally seen real martial Dao Grandmasters fighting before. However, the exchange between Mountain Ghost and Wuxia did not seem like a battle between martial Dao Grandmasters at all. It was a one-sided suppression. Looking at Mountain Ghost, who was vomiting blood in the pit and looked wretched, everyone could not react in time. Mountain Ghost, one of the 9 divine magus priests, was incredibly powerful when he launched his attack. However, he was slapped by Wuxia, who looked like an old man, and even made him vomit blood. The contrast was way too big. Mountain Ghost clutched his chest in shame and indignation, but at the same time, his eyes flickered with deep horror. This old man was no longer at the martial Dao true pellet realm, but had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. It was not easy to condense the true pellet, but it was even more difficult to step into the true fire spirit refinement realm. Most of the martial artists in the pugilistic world would not think that they had reached perfection after stepping into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Instead, they would work harder to cultivate because they knew that the road ahead was longer. Due to reverence, they wanted to cross another realm. However, in reality, there was almost no one among the 10 martial Dao Grandmasters who could step into the true fire spirit refinement realm. Wuxia was an old man, and his lifespan was almost depleted. How could he step into the true fire spirit refinement realm? At this moment, Mountain Ghost was cursing the hidden demons for being shameless. If they had known that Wuxia was in the true fire spirit refinement realm, their moon-worshipping cult would have sent the strongest among the 9 great magi, East Emperor Tai, or the High Priest. Siddhartha, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Do the two of you really want to turn the demonic alliance meeting into a battlefield for internal strife? Since that's the case, let's not discuss attacking Floating Jade Mountain. Let's have an internal strife first. Wuxia said indifferently, I don't want to fight with anyone either, but someone has a foul mouth and deserves to be beaten up. Now, some of the martial artists of my devil path seem to have forgotten their own identities and dare to say anything. There is no longer any awe in their hearts. The Kunlun devil cult is indeed unable to represent the devil Dao, but it can still let the disciples of the devil Dao know the glory of the past. Why don't you take a look? When have the disciples of the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery ever slandered the ancient Buddhist sect sage Bodhidharma? Who in the Dao sect would dare to slander perfected Lu Chunyang? With your current strength, how dare you look down on the Kunlun devil cult? Wait until you have the strength of the Kunlun devil cult first. Mountain Ghost was furious, but he didn't dare to say anything else. Even though he knew he was no match for the enemy, he still insisted on arguing. That was courting death. Siddhartha put his palms together and sighed. Senior Wei, now that we're facing a great enemy, can't we put aside the grudges between the bright demons and the lurking demons for now? Wuxia didn't even look up. He said directly, of course we can put aside our grudges for now. However, judging from the attitude of the moon-worshipping cult, they clearly don't have any sincerity. Our lurking demons aren't idiots. We won't agree to anything that goes too far. Siddhartha frowned as well. It seemed like the matter was really going to be stuck here. The lurking demons didn't want to back down, and the bright demons were powerful to begin with. It was even more impossible for them to back down. As such, how could the matter continue? At this moment, Chu Xiu, who had been sitting quietly at the side, suddenly spoke up. Since we can't work together, then we might as well not listen to each other and do our own things. Can't we? Everyone subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. Wuxia Xianxia sneered. Do you think you have the right to speak here? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Even you have the nerve to spout nonsense here. Why can't I? I'm here on behalf of the Shadow Demon cult. If you think I don't have the right to speak, then do you think the Shadow Demon cult doesn't have the right to speak as well? Very well, I'll pass on these words to the Saintess when I return. Wuxia Xianxia snorted. He wanted to say something, but he forcefully swallowed it back down. Although the Shadow Demon cult only had that woman left, she was famous for being not to be trifled with. At the very least, the Five Poison cult didn't want to provoke her. If it were anyone else, this kind of quarrel would be easily brushed aside, and neither side would take it seriously. However, the same could not be said for that woman. After all, she was famous for being temperamental and petty. Chu Xiu smiled. He realized that Mei Qinglian seemed to have quite a reputation in the demonic lineage. Senior demonic martial artists like Wei Shuya knew her, and Mei Qinglian's reputation was enough to scare a demonic sect like the Five Poison cult, which wasn't very strong. Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look in his eyes. Do our own things? Tell me your opinion. Chu Xiu spread his hands. My opinion is very simple. Since we can't work together now, why should the Bright Demon cult and the Hidden Demon cult forcefully join forces? In any case, everyone's goal is the same. They all want to make trouble for the five sword sects. As long as the goal is achieved, the result is not important. Your Bright Demon cult thinks that you are strong, so you can attack Floating Jade Mountain during the World Sword Sect Conference. On the other hand, my Immortal lineage is already used to hiding in the dark. This time around, the World Sword Sect Conference has invited so many people, it is not difficult for our Immortal lineage to sneak in. With this kind of blossoming inside and outside and attacking together, there does not seem to be any conflict. Chu Xiu's idea was not good, but it was definitely not bad. At least for the people on both sides, especially those from the Hidden Demon cult, they felt that it was not bad. Within the Hidden Devil clan, most of the people were actually used to acting alone. Even if they were not alone, they would rarely gather together in large numbers to attract attention. Like the Phaseless Demon sect, the Hidden Devil clan that could maintain such a large scale was definitely one of the few. The Phaseless Demon sect was able to do this not because they were the strongest in the Hidden Demon cult, but because the Phaseless Demon sect's cultivation method was indeed top-notch in terms of hiding their aura and changing their appearance. So instead of being on tenterhooks and suspecting that they would join forces with the Bright Demon cult, they might as well act alone. In any case, the result would be the same for them. Wei Shuya laughed and said, "This kid is right. Since the two sides can't come to an agreement, then let's not talk and fight on our own." Sidari frowned and said, "But won't there be any problems if no one mediates?" Wei Shuya said indifferently, "But who has the right to mediate? Ever since the cult leader of the Hidden Demon cult disappeared, no one has the right to lead the entire Hidden Demon cult. Our Hidden Demon cult doesn't have such a person, and the moon-worshipping cult doesn't have one either. Someone is giving out random commands and is actually holding us back. We might as well make a bunch of demons dance around. Just like what that little kid said, the result will be the same anyway." Hearing this, Sidari turned his gaze towards the Bright Demon cult. As long as they agreed, the matter would be settled. Mountain Ghost snorted and said, "Since you don't want to take the big picture into consideration, what else can I say? But don't regret it if something unexpected happens. With that, Mountain Ghost turned and left. But from his attitude, it was clear that he had tacitly agreed to this matter. After the other bright demon cult members left, Wei Shuya walked over and patted Chu Xiu's shoulder. "You're not bad, kid. Our demon cult finally has a successor." After saying that, Wei Shuya took a step forward and left the hall. At this moment, the hidden demon cult's warriors in the hall all looked at Chu Xiu with envy and jealousy. To be valued by Wei Shuya and even say such words in front of everyone, this kid's future in the demon cult could be said to be limitless. Among the hidden demon cult, Wei Shuya wasn't the oldest old monster, nor was he the strongest demon cult. But he was the one with the greatest reputation and prestige. In the past, the 9 sky demons of the Sky Mountain had joined forces and formed an alliance to return to the Kunlun devil cult. That was the last grand occasion of the demon cult. Although they died prematurely, it was still seen as the last glory of the demon cult. Although Wei Shuya and the other 4's actions had failed, they had also shown the entire Jianghu the power and unity of the demon cult. Some of the righteous Dao sects had also restrained themselves. Therefore, although Wei Shuya was old, he carried the favor of the entire demon cult, as well as the powerful prestige and rallying power of that era. Such an existence was rare in the pugilistic world. For Chu Xiu to be able to obtain Wei Shuya's favor, it could be said that as long as Wei Shuya asked, even a little bit of his favor would be enough for Chu Xiu to live off for the rest of his life. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "This senior Wei is really an ancestor of the demon cult. His bearing is indeed not something that ordinary warriors can compare to. He is more like an expert than the elders of some famous righteous Dao sections." Mr. Liu looked at Chu Xiu with a smile that was not a smile and said, "Do you think that Senior Wei is very strong, but he is kind and easy to talk to?" Without waiting for Chu Xiu to answer, Mr. Liu laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "Senior Wei is not easy to talk to. In his early years, he was very irritable and impulsive. Otherwise, he wouldn't have formed the 9 sky demons with the other 4 people when his talent was amazing and his future was limitless to fight against the righteous Dao. Moreover, the demon cult has never had the habit of guiding the younger generation. Demon cult warriors, the competition is cruel, and infighting is very normal. However, following the destruction of the 5 great sky devils of the 9th heaven mountain, Senior Wei has also changed his mind. This is especially true since our hidden devil faction is already small in numbers. If we continue to act like we did in the past, it is likely that we will be destroyed sooner or later. Therefore, you should be glad that you met me and the Holy Maiden. We are all from the hidden devil lineage, so we don't mind helping you to the best of our ability. But if you met those guys from the moon-worshipping cult or the evil extreme sect, you would most likely be killed by them and then robbed of your inherited cultivation method." Chapter 380. This time, the demonic alliance meeting was not a happy one. Both sides parted on bad terms. However, at least the people of the demonic path were certain of one thing. At this moment, both sides had put aside their prejudices and worked together to take back the demonic creation flag. After the demonic alliance meeting ended, Chu Xiu followed Mr. Liu, who was disguised as the righteous warrior Su Songtao, back to the sword separation pavilion to wait for the sword sect meeting to begin. A month later, the World Sword Sect meeting on Floating Jade Mountain officially began. Chu Xiu also followed the crowd up the mountain. Floating Jade Mountain covered a large area. This place was originally a jade mine, so it was called Floating Jade Mountain. However, after the mine on the mountain was completely excavated, it was abandoned. This time, the World Sword Sect meeting was held here because it was spacious and could accommodate more warriors. That was why they chose Floating Jade Mountain. Chu Xiu followed the crowd to the top of Floating Jade Mountain. This place had already been built with countless pavilions by the people of the 5 major sword sections. There was also a huge training ground in the middle for the upcoming competition. As the representative of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu also had a certain status. That was why Chu Xiu's position was still relatively close to the front. As for Mr. Liu, who was disguised as Su Songtao, although he was a righteous warrior on the surface, he was only a loose cultivator. That was why he was arranged to be at the back. However, Mr. Liu gestured to Chu Xiu to act according to the circumstances. Floating Jade Mountain was bustling with noise and excitement. Sword cultivators and unaffiliated cultivators who had heard the news were quarreling and discussing. Some of them looked excited as if they had caught a chance to attend a centennial event. However, they did not know that the seemingly lively floating Jade Mountain would soon turn into a bloodbath. What's more, they didn't know that the person they were chatting with right now was actually a Devil's Path villain. At this moment, on a high platform to the north of floating Jade Mountain, 5 sword-wielding warriors looked down at the crowd below. There were both men and women, and their auras were frighteningly restrained. These 5 people were the leaders of the 5 great sword sects of the present era: the Forgetting Sword Hut, the Storm Sword Tomb, the Sword King City, the Hidden Sword Villa, and the Yu Palace. They were either sect masters or martial arts masters with real power in their sections. The sect master of the Yu Palace was a charming young woman dressed in palace attire. Although she wasn't young anymore, she still retained her charm. Looking at the warriors below, the Yu Palace's sect master said solemnly, "Will the demonic Dao really come?" Beside her, a white-robed sword-wielding martial artist with a white scarf wrapped around his head and face said, "It doesn't matter if they come or not. If the people of the demonic Dao come, we will be singing a one-man show. If the demonic Dao doesn't come, we will sing a one-man show. In any case, the result will be the same." Another middle-aged man with a square face, wearing a brocade robe, but carrying 7 swords on his back, sneered, "Your Sword King City is still very stubborn about the position of the head of the 5 great sword sects. Sword King City is far away in the western region. Even if the position of head of the 5 great sword sects falls to you, apart from reputation, what benefits does it bring you?" The white-robed martial artist narrowed his eyes. "My Sword King City wants reputation, unlike your Hidden Sword Villa. You want to have a reputation, but you don't have the chance." The people of the Hidden Sword Villa revealed a trace of anger in their eyes. Just as they were about to say something, a youth beside them said lightly, "Before the outsiders come, are you going to quarrel or fight first? Save your energy. Who knows, there might already be countless demonic Dao people among the warriors below. If you want to make a move, don't be in a hurry." The young man who spoke looked less than 30 years old. If one ignored the vicissitudes in his eyes, he was no different from the younger generation of warriors below. The strangest thing about him was his attire. The young man looked masculine and handsome, but there was a golden tattoo of a broken sword between his eyebrows. At first glance, it looked like a third eye. He wore a loose white robe and was barefooted. A sword hung crookedly from his waist. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that it was actually a broken sword. That's right. The position of the head of the 5 great sword sects has been empty for so many years. It's time to decide who's superior and who's inferior. However, we can't kill each other here. If you want to fight, you'll have plenty of opportunities later. Moreover, these demonic Dao people have been faintly showing signs of recovery recently. Their movements are getting bigger and bigger. It's time to find an opportunity to suppress them." The last person to speak was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He wore an ordinary green robe. There was nothing special about him from head to toe. He could only be described as ordinary. He was definitely the kind of person that would not stand out in a crowd. If it were not for the long sword in his hand that had an old-fashioned mahogany scabbard, no one would even think that he was a man of the pugilistic world. However, this person seemed to have a very high status in the 5 sword sects. As soon as he spoke, the warriors of Sword King City and Hidden Sword Villa, who could not stand the sight of him, quietened down. Only the barefooted young man said lightly, your sitting forgetting sword hut is next to the moon-worshipping cult. Do you feel the pressure? The middle-aged man nodded. That's the number one sect of the demonic Tao, the moon-worshipping cult. Of course, there's pressure. More than 20 years ago, the moon-worshipping cult's leader, Yi Shaonan, fought with the Great Light Temple because of a poisonous insect. None of the 6 martial academies' first seats could withstand more than 3 moves from him. If it were not for the Wang Nian Zen Hall's first seat, Su Yun, and the abbot, Su Ci, who was not yet the abbot at that time, the Great Light Temple would have suffered. Now, Yi Shaonan has not fought for more than 20 years. It is said that his heaven-mending heart sutra has reached great success, and his demonic power is close to that of the Kunlun devil cult of the past. To be neighbors with such a person, only a dead person would feel no pressure. Back then, we were wrong. Even if the moon-worshipping cult was not related to the Kunlun devil cult, we should have eradicated them. The same goes for the other demonic Tao sections. But in the end, not long after, the demonic Tao has begun to recover. That barefooted young man stared at the skies and spoke. Back then when we fought against the Kunlun demon sect, our Windcloud sword tomb also has a record of it. Even though Dugu Weiwa is no longer around, the Kunlun demon sect is still as strong as ever, so strong that it surpasses everyone's imagination. In that battle, our righteous sects gave it our all. The eminent monks of the Buddhist sects died, the Daoist masters of the Daoist sects also died. That generation's sword emperor of our Windcloud sword tomb also had his sword and head broken by a devil lord of the Kunlun demon sect. After the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult, it is not that the righteous Tao sects do not want to wipe out the rest of the demonic Tao in one fell swoop, but they do not have the strength. Such a powerful Kunlun devil cult will not appear again. The moon-worshipping cult is far from being qualified. I don't know if Yi Shaonan will come this time. If he dares to come, I want to see whether his moon-worshipping cult's heaven-mending heart sutra can cover the sun and cover the moon, or my storm sword tomb's divine sword eradicating abyss is unparalleled in the world. The expression of the middle-aged man from the forgotten sword hut finally changed slightly. Storm sword tomb invited eradicating abyss out? The youth grinned, revealing a neat row of white teeth. Ever since the battle of the Kunlun devil cult, eradicating abyss has not come out for hundreds of years. Now that the World Sword Sect Conference is a grand occasion for my sword lineage, it is time for eradicating abyss to come out and see the sun, and blood. The other 4 people were shocked. Only the martial artists from the 5 major sword sects knew how terrifying that sword was. Besides the Storm Sword Tomb's foundation, no one could suppress that sword. It was called a divine sword, but it was an incomparably evil and murderous weapon. At this time, the martial artists below did not feel the aura of an impending storm. For them, as long as they could hear a martial arts grandmaster-level powerhouse speak, even if it was just a sentence, it would be enough for them to benefit immensely. The seats were arranged by the Forgotten Sword Hut, and they were arranged according to the approximate positions of West Chu, Eastern Qi, and Northern Yen. Chu Xiu was someone from the Guanzhong torture room, which was located between the 3 countries, so his seat was arranged between West Chu and Northern Yen, a bit further away from Eastern Qi. The martial artist from the Forgotten Sword Hut who arranged a seat for Chu Xiu seemed to be very intelligent. He knew that Chu Xiu had once slaughtered in Eastern Qi and was not well received by the martial artists of Eastern Qi, so he specially arranged for Chu Xiu to be placed between West Chu and Northern Yen. However, he did not expect that besides Eastern Qi, there were also many people from Northern Yen and West Chu who did not like Chu Xiu. Not long after Chu Xiu took his seat, people from other sects came over. When one of the people from the new sect saw Chu Xiu, his body stiffened and he paused. Someone behind him said in surprise, "Eldertson, why aren't you walking? Take a seat." Chu Xiu looked back and saw Teachertson of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect and a few other disciples of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect walking over. Their seats were next to Chu Xiu. Seeing that the person who had come was Teachertson, Chu Xiu grinned at Teachertson, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. It was very bright. So it is Elder Cien. Last time, Eldertson ran very quickly. For the first time, I know that the Ba Mountain Sword sect is not just skilled in sword techniques, but also in lightness skills. Teachertson's face flushed red at Chu Xiu's words. He had been a scholar in the past. Last time in the Tower of Heaven, he had lost face. Originally, he had put aside the grievances between him and Chu Xiu. As long as he stood on Chu Xiu's side at that time, 1/3 of the things in the Tower of Heaven would be his. Unfortunately, Teachertson had made the wrong choice in the end. He chose to stand on Xiahou Wujiang's side. In the end, he only obtained half of the fierce beast's heart and fled dejectedly. Thinking of this matter, he still felt pain in his heart. The pain of regret was even more painful than when he learned that his disciple Zhang Baitao had been killed by Chu Xiu. At this time, a Unity of Heaven realm martial artist behind Teachertson said in surprise, "Eldertson, who is this friend? Do you know him?" This time, the sect leader of the Ba Mountain Sword sect did not come. The Ba Mountain Sword sect was not strong and only had one martial arts grandmaster. Naturally, they could not ignore the sect just to come to the World Sword Sect Conference to watch the show. Therefore, only Teachertson and another Unity of Heaven realm martial artist came with a few young disciples to watch the show. Chu Xiu smiled at the martial artist and said, "Well said. I am Chu Xiu, an old friend of Elder Cien." Chapter 381. Of course, the people of Ba Mountain Sword sect had heard of Chu Xiu's name. This name had been spread by Teacher Cien. After all, one of his personal disciples had died. No matter what, he had to report it to the sect. But a sect at the level of Ba Mountain Sword sect would not mobilize their power for an ordinary disciple and go on a grand scale to avenge him. They had many disciples. If they went to great lengths to avenge him, they would not just lose one disciple, but many more. So if Chu Xiu was a nobody, it would not matter. But in the end, Chu Xiu was a torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room. The sect leader of Ba Mountain Sword sect could only say his condolences to Teacher Cien. But looking at Teachertson's expression, he was actually not that sad. But looking at Chu Xiu in front of him, the Ba Mountain Sword sect warrior could not help but want to explode. Previously, he could not see Chu Xiu, but now that Chu Xiu was here, if he continued to pretend to be deaf and mute, he would seem too cowardly. But before he could say anything, he was pulled back by Teacher Cien. Teachertson immediately whispered a few words into his ear and pulled him to the side to sit down. In reality, while Teachertson's strength was not great, and he was somewhat hypocritical, in reality, Teachertson knew his limits. He knew his own strength, and he also knew the strength of Ba Mountain Sword sect. If he fought against Chu Xiu, he would only be at a disadvantage. So while the one who died was his disciple, Teachertson did not want to continue fighting with Chu Xiu. This was not cowardice, this was reason. He, Teachertson, had roamed the martial world for so many years. He had relied on this reason to become an elder of Ba Mountain Sword sect. Otherwise, he would have been killed many times over. And now, seeing that Teachertson knew his limits, Chu Xiu could not be bothered to continue targeting him. He was a reasonable person sometimes. It was Teachertson who had a grudge against him, not him who had a grudge against Teacher Cien. Chu Xiu could naturally tell that Teachertson was not playing a game of enduring humiliation. Instead, he really did not want to avenge his past grudges. At this time, a voice came from behind Chu Xiu, "Brother Chu, we meet again." Chu Xiu turned around and saw that it was Xia Xiaolu from the World Alliance. Beside Xia Xiaolu were a few Unity of the World Realm martial artists. Clearly, they were also experts from the World Alliance. Xia Xiaolu's strength was right there, he was just a spectator, not a representative like Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I knew you would come. The 5 great sword sects will hold the World Sword Sect Conference in West Chu, so your World Alliance will definitely be invited. That's right, your World Alliance's alliance leader Chen didn't come? Xia Xiaolu shook his head and said, the World Alliance has so many things to deal with, how could my master have the time to come here and play with them? And according to my master's personality, if those so-called sword path grandmasters say something wrong during their sermon, my master will probably go up and argue with them. In the end, it's even possible for them to fight. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. He seemed to have heard some rumors that the World Alliance's alliance leader Qin Qingdi was indeed not someone who was easy to talk to. At this time, Xia Xiaolu walked closer to Chu Xiu and said in a low voice, Brother Chu, if the World Sword Sect Conference ends early or if something happens, you should immediately leave Floating Jade Mountain. Don't stay here any longer. Chu Xiu revealed a strange look in his eyes and said, What news did you hear? Xia Xiaolu nodded and said, My master said that this World Sword Sect Conference doesn't seem to be peaceful. The 5 great sword sects' actions are provoking the demonic path. I don't think the demonic path will let this matter go. In any case, my master said that if it were him, he would definitely make a move and directly smash this Floating Jade Mountain to smithereens. So, our World Alliance is only here to watch the show. After watching the show, we'll leave immediately. It's best if we don't get involved in the matter between the demonic path and the 5 great sword sects. Chu Xiu nodded, but he was thinking in his heart, as expected, the other sects are not stupid. These people also know what the 5 great sword sects are preparing to do. However, this is an internal matter of the 5 great sword sects. Moreover, the demonic path has been showing signs of revival these years, so they have to suppress it. So, no one stopped it. Chu Xiu asked, since Alliance leader Chen already knows about this, does he still dare to let you go up Floating Jade Mountain? Xia Xiaolu said matter-of-factly, why not? This is a fight between the demonic path and the 5 great sword sects. The others have no intention of interfering. Our World Alliance is just watching from the side and has no intention of making a move. Chu Xiu was silent. It seemed that Qin Qingdi had guessed wrongly. This time, the demonic path would indeed act, but if they did, it would be a major move. He had thought that this time, Floating Jade Mountain was only a matter between the sword path and the demonic path. He did not know that in the end, this matter had evolved into a war between the righteous path and the demonic path. Of course, even this had nothing to do with the World Alliance. Because the World Alliance did not belong to the righteous path, they also did not belong to the demonic path. So when the two sides fought, no one would provoke a neutral faction like the World Alliance. At this time, Xia Xiaolu also looked at Teacherson and pursed his lips. Isn't this the elder of the Ba Mountain Sword sect who escaped last time? What, have you settled your grudge with him? In the time that Xia Xiaolu had known Chu Xiu, he had more or less understood Chu Xiu's personality. He was tough, strong, and had a hint of madness. Right now, there were only 2 kinds of people who had a grudge with Chu Xiu. One was the living that could not be killed, and the other was the dead that were already dead. Right now, the people of the Ba Mountain Sword sect were living peacefully with Chu Xiu. This made Xia Xiaolu feel that it was incredible. Chu Xiu corrected. It is they who have a grudge with me, not the other way around. Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Xia Xiaolu immediately understood what Chu Xiu meant. So the people of the Ba Mountain Sword sect were afraid. But Xia Xiaolu felt that this was normal. He was in West Chu and naturally knew what the people of the Ba Mountain Sword sect were like. Among the top sects in the world, factions like the Ba Mountain Sword sect were at the bottom because they only had one martial arts grandmaster. Not only that, but this martial Dao grandmaster's strength was not too strong, and there were no outstanding figures in the next generation, which was very embarrassing. Once there was a gap in one generation of the Ba Mountain Sword sect, the sect would immediately fall apart, and then it would be completely removed from the Jianghu songs. So usually, sects like the Ba Mountain Sword sect would act like cowards, and act like top sects with some small sections. But in front of some troublesome opponents, they did not mind surrendering. At this time, there was a hubbub in the crowd behind them. Chu Xiu raised an eyebrow and said, "Important people have come up the mountain?" Xia Xiaolu shook his head and said, "The important people have come to Floating Jade Mountain ahead of time. The ones coming up at this time are only the younger generation." As he spoke, Chu Xiu and Xia Xiaolu instinctively looked in the direction of the newcomer. Chu Xiu frowned. Xia Xiaolu rarely smiled and said, "Ba Mountain Sword sect's grievance with you has been resolved, but this person is not. I heard that in the Northern Yen, if someone mentions your name, this person will not be able to control his demeanor." The person who had just come up the mountain was a handsome young man with an extraordinary presence. He wore a gilded robe and was surrounded by countless warriors. This person could be considered an old acquaintance of Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu had not seen him for a long time. This person was Nie Donglu of the Morgue village. Just as Xia Xiaolu had said, the grievance between Chu Xiu and Nie Donglu had not been resolved. Previously, when Chu Xiu stole the treasure from Nie Donglu had sent people to kill him. At that time, Chu Xiu had no one to rely on and was in a sorry state. Chu Xiu would not forget this grievance. Chu Xiu stared at Nie Donglu for a while and suddenly said, "Nie Donglu has entered the 5 Qis returning to the origin realm?" Chu Xiu vaguely remembered that the last time Nie Donglu's news came, he was only a physical invulnerability expert. Then he went into seclusion because of something, and his ranking on the Longhu leaderboard fell out of the top 10. Now he has actually entered the 5 Qis returning to the origin realm. Is it because Nie Donglu's talent is unparalleled, or did he encounter some opportunity? Xia Xiaolu looked at Chu Xiu in surprise and said, "You don't know?" "What should I know?" Chu Xiu asked back. Xia Xiaolu was a little speechless. "You are a Northern Yen martial artist. Don't you care about what happened in the Northern Yen recently?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "People in Jianghu are like duckweed. How can I care about my background? I can't even take care of the things in front of me. How can I have the leisure to care about the Northern Yen?" Xia Xiaolu shook his head again. Mo Tianlin always said that he was indifferent. It must be natural for him to shave his head and join a Buddhist sect to meditate. But now it seemed that Chu Xiu was even more indifferent than him. Looking at Nie Donglu in the crowd, Xia Xiaolu said in a low voice, "Nie Donglu obtained an opportunity. But this opportunity is not an item, but a person. Some time ago, it was said that Nie Donglu was defeated by a woman. This matter was probably too much for someone as proud as Nie Donglu, so he put down everything and went into seclusion. Later, because there were some things to take care of in the morgue, but Nie Renlong wasn't there, Nie Donglu had to go. But unexpectedly, he met the great Northern Yen Jianghu Stone General, Han Baxian, and was taken in as a personal disciple. A martial arts grandmaster for a father and a martial arts grandmaster for a master. Is this opportunity big enough? Chu Xiu looked at Nie Donglu in surprise. This guy's luck was really good. He just went out for a trip and he was able to have a martial arts grandmaster as his master. And Han Baxian wasn't just any martial arts grandmaster. Although he didn't belong to any sect, he was very famous in the Northern Yen. He was one of the strongest among the martial arts grandmasters. Chapter 382. Stone General. Han Baxian's nickname was quite interesting. He had indeed been a general in his early years and had even become the general of the Stone Forest Army that guarded the western part of Yen. He was considered a core force in the Northern Yen military. At that time, Han Baxian was even valued by a big shot in the Northern Yen military. He was prepared to take him under the command of the 5th Army and make him a deputy general. However, Han Baxian was obsessed with martial arts and despised being in the military for interfering with his training. Therefore, he resigned from his position as the general of the Stone Forest Army and focused on training. He went to the cold lands of the far north or the far west desert to polish his martial arts. He was more famous there than in the military. Rumor had it that Han Baxian's personality was domineering and aggressive, and he was even a bit of a martial arts fanatic. Logically speaking, his personality should not be compatible with Nie Donglu, but now Han Baxian had taken Nie Donglu as his disciple, which made Chu Xiu feel a bit strange. Nie Donglu was from the northern Yan, so he was naturally assigned to the northern Yan side. It just so happened that Chu Xiu's position was not close to eastern Qi. To his left was western Chu, and to his right was northern Yan. When Nie Donglu looked over, he naturally saw Chu Xiu standing there. Nie Donglio's expression changed slightly, but he still revealed a smile. Nie Donglio's attitude towards Chu Xiu was very strange. In the beginning, he did not see Chu Xiu as an opponent. To him, Chu Xiu was only a small obstacle. If he could kill him, he would. If he could not, he would not waste too much effort to hunt down Chu Xiu. Therefore, after obtaining the treasure at Luyang Mountain, Nie Donglu did not even use the power of the morgue to hunt down Chu Xiu. He only gathered some sects that wanted to curry favor with the morgue. When Chu Xiu left the northern Yan, he quickly became famous in the Jianghu like a dragon returning to the sea. He even jumped to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. It would be a lie to say that Nie Donglu wasn't jealous of the situation. Nie Donglu naturally felt uncomfortable as he looked at the loose cultivator he could crush to death in the past, who had now become a torture officer in the Guangzhong torture room and a young elite ranked above him on the Longhu list. Even so, Nie Donglu would only feel uncomfortable. He wasn't a weak-minded person like Sword King City's Lin Kaiyun, who would be affected by such a small matter. What really affected Nie Donglu was not himself, but the rumors outside. People in Jianghu always liked to spread gossip. Some people just couldn't bear to see others doing well. The more unlucky someone was, the happier they would be. Even though Nie Donglu had countless friends outside and appeared to be very humble, polite, and loyal, there were still some people who just wanted to see him suffer. So, as soon as the news about Chu Xiu reached the northern Yan side, there would immediately be people in the northern Yan side saying that Nie Donglu had let Chu Xiu go, and now he was being stepped on. Anyway, it was as ugly as it could be. These rumors had already affected Nie Donglio's reputation to a certain extent. He couldn't ignore it. There was only one way to solve it. It wasn't to kill those people who were gossiping, but to defeat Chu Xiu. There were too many of the former. Not to mention the current power of the Morgue village. Even if the Morgue village had the power of the Great Light Temple, they still wouldn't be able to kill all of them. So, the most reliable way was the latter. As long as Chu Xiu was defeated or killed by him, everything would be solved. It was simple and direct. In the past, Nie Donglu liked to use schemes and look down on those simple-minded boorish people. In his opinion, such boorish people would be killed by others sooner or later, no matter how strong they were. But ever since he was defeated by that woman, Nie Donglu suffered some setbacks. In the face of absolute power, his schemes couldn't be put to good use. Nie Donglu said he was the young master of the Morgue village, and someone said, "You lost to a woman." Nie Donglu said he was a hero on the Longhu list, and someone said, "You lost to a woman." Nie Donglu said he had already started training in isolation, and someone said, "You lost to a woman." There was no way to clear his name of being defeated in public, and there was no way to justify it. It was simple and direct. It also made Nie Donglu realize that sometimes, absolute power was more important than schemes. After that, Nie Donglu got to know his current master, Han Baxian. This famous martial arts master of the northern Yan world was extremely wild in both strength and personality. He also taught Nie Donglu many things other than martial arts. When one's strength reached a certain level, it was enough to destroy any conspiracy. In the past, Nie Donglu had put the cart before the horse. Now, Nie Donglu finally realized that it was right to rely on schemes and brains, but the most important thing a warrior should rely on was their fists. Thinking of this, Nie Donglu walked over to Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "Brother Chu, long time no see." Everyone present looked at Chu Xiu and Nie Donglu. These two were heroes on the Longhu list, and everyone had heard of the feud between them. However, in the past few years, Chu Xiu had been in Guangzhong, and Nie Donglu had also been training in isolation in the northern Yan. The two had not had many opportunities to interact. Now that they were in time for the World Sword Sect Conference, were they preparing to warm up before the conference? Chu Xiu also looked at Nie Donglu and said calmly, "Yes, long time no see. It feels like things have remained the same, but people have changed. Brother Nie, you have changed a lot." At the moment, Chu Xiu's attitude was calm, and there was no sign that he had a great feud with Nie Donglu. The two of them seemed like old friends catching up. Nie Donglu looked straight at Chu Xiu and took a step forward. The aura around him became extremely serious. In the past, Chu Xiu had fought with Nie Donglu. Compared to the Nie Donglu of the past, the aura around him was completely different. It could be imagined how much he had changed in this period of time. People change, don't they? But what has already happened will not change. Brother Chu, it is time to end the feud between us. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "I was the one who was chased miserably back then. It seems like I should be the one saying this. The World Sword Sect Conference is a good place. With so many people watching, it is enough for us to settle the past feud. Of course, looking at you, you probably can't wait and want to make a move now? Alright, I will accompany you to the end." An extremely oppressive aura was released from Chu Xiu's body. It was not weaker than Nie Donglu's at all. In fact, the strong killing intent was even stronger than Nie Donglu's. Since leaving the northern Yan, Chu Xiu had always been growing through killing. On the other hand, Nie Donglu had been training in seclusion and training with his master. Although his cultivation level had improved quickly, the number of people he had killed was not as much as Chu Xiu. Just when both sides thought that the two of them would definitely fight, Nie Donglu's aura suddenly dissipated. Like a spring breeze and rain, it dissipated the killing intent on Chu Xiu's body. Nie Donglu laughed and said, "Brother Chu, I was just joking. Did you take it seriously? I don't care about grudges anymore. If there's a chance later, we can have a spar. However, the World Sword Sect Convention is about to begin. If we fight here, aren't we not giving face to the 5 major sword sects?" Chu Xiu suddenly sneered and said, "I realized that I was wrong before. You, young Master Nie, haven't changed at all." After saying that, Chu Xiu sat down and ignored Nie Donglu. Nie Donglu did the same and went to his seat. The two of them did not say another word. Previously, Chu Xiu thought that Nie Donglu had become more straightforward and wanted to solve the problem with his fists. He did not expect him to still be the same. In the past, the one who had been hunted was Chu Xiu. In the end, Nie Donglu said that he didn't care about grudges. Didn't that make him seem petty? Moreover, the one who had released his aura to provoke was Nie Donglu. In the end, he said that he was joking and Chu Xiu became the petty one. This person's mouth was full of lies, and his schemes and calculations were already embedded in his bones. Every word he said had to be at least a little bit of an advantage. However, Chu Xiu did not care. He did not have a good reputation in Eastern Qi, or the entire Jianghu. Chu Xiu did not need a good reputation. Now that he was called petty and calculative, it would not hurt Chu Xiu. As for why Nie Donglu did not make a move in the end, the reason was very simple. It was because he was not confident. If Nie Donglu was confident, he would not care about the reputation of the 5 great sword sects. He would have defeated Chu Xiu on the spot or even killed him to regain his reputation. After all, he was the young master of Honor Village. He was already dead. The 5 major sword sects would not let him die with them. Nie Donglu did not make a move because he was not confident. Based on the aura that Chu Xiu had released, he was not confident that he could beat Chu Xiu on the spot. So, he had to wait. He had to wait until he understood Chu Xiu, or until Chu Xiu was exhausted and injured. Han Baxian had taught him to use his fists to solve problems, but Nie Donglu did not forget his brain and calculations. Wouldn't it be safer to crush the opponent under the premise that he had absolute confidence in winning? Xia Xiaolu sat next to Chu Xiu and asked in a low voice, "Are you going to make a move later?" A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes as he said, "Even if I don't make a move, the young manor lord won't let this go. I want revenge, and he wants his reputation. We will have to fight." Xia Xiaolu nodded. "Be careful. I have not met Nie Donglu, but my master has evaluated his father, Nie Renlong. Nie Renlong is not weak, but he is not too strong either. But what makes Nie Renlong truly frightens people is his methods. Most of the 6 gangs were born in the wilderness. The ones who can walk to the end and have the greatest potential, other than West Chu's World Alliance, are the Northern Yen Memorial Village. Chapter 383. It wasn't hard to deal with a reckless warrior who only knew how to fight and kill, and it wasn't hard to deal with a guy who only knew how to plot in the dark. What was really difficult was to combine the two, and Nie Donglu was like that now. Chu Xiu knew that the ghost village was not to be trifled with. However, the enmity had already been formed, so it had to be resolved sooner or later. At the foot of Floating Jade Mountain, almost everyone who was supposed to be there had arrived. The disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut had already come out to maintain order, ready to wait for the World Sword Sect Conference to officially begin. But at that moment, an even louder clamor came from the foot of the mountain. Clearly, the person who had come was even more famous than Nie Donglu. Chu Xiu turned around and saw that the people who had come were people from the Great Light Temple, Sabodhi Monastery, and some other top sections. These major sects were all invited by the 5 sword sects to attend the ceremony. Top sects of the Jianghu of this level never lacked martial Dao grandmasters. For example, in the Great Light Temple's 3 great Zen halls and the 6 great martial academies, every first seat had the strength of a martial Dao grandmaster. The people from the Great Light Temple were the head of the Vajra department, Su Yan, and the head of the Kongji Zen Hall, Su Du. The martial institution and the Zen Hall had each sent 1 person, which was enough to give face to the 5 major sword sections. The first seat of the Kongji Zen Hall, Su Du, was a middle-aged monk who looked to be in his 40s. Compared to the other monks of the Temple of Great Light, Su Du appeared to be a little sloppy. He swayed as he walked, and without his monk robes, he looked like an old ruffian on the streets. He did not look like an accomplished monk at all. However, among these people, his position was the highest. The other warriors of the Great Light Temple could only stand behind him. This made the few disciples of the Great Light Temple behind him cover their faces with their hands, looking embarrassed. They really could not understand why the temple would send Uncle Master Shidu here. This was simply affecting the image of the Great Light Temple. Su Yan tugged at Su Du's arm and whispered, "Senior brother Su Du, mind your image." Su Du glanced at him and said indifferently, "Image? I'm not senior brother Abbot. What image do I need? Back then, my master gave me the Dharma name of Su Du. I have not wasted my time, and I have not let him down. What's more, the Buddha has said, everything is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, and a shadow, like dew, or like lightning. I have Buddha in my heart, so who can say that I have tarnished the reputation of the Buddhist sect? A Buddha with a gold-plated body and a dignified appearance is a Buddha, but a clay and wooden body that protects the poor people is not a Buddha? Junior brother, you are too obsessed with appearances. It is not a good thing to be too attached to these appearances. Buddha is in your heart, not on your kasaya. Su Yan was rendered speechless by Su Du's words, and he rolled his eyes. The 6 great martial institutions cultivated martial arts, while the 3 great Zen halls cultivated both Zen and martial arts. In terms of understanding of various Buddhist scriptures, they were far inferior to the 3 great Zen halls in terms of eloquence. Although Su Yan knew that these were all excuses and sophistry, when he heard it, it seemed to make sense. He looked at the Buddhist disciples behind him and saw that they were all admiring Uncle Master Su Du, who was indeed an eminent monk of his generation. Seeing this, Su Yan was instantly helpless. He was deeply worried about the future of the Great Light Temple. At this moment, Huizhen, who was behind him, suddenly stiffened and paused. Huizhen, what's wrong? Su Yan asked. Because of Ming Chen's death, Huizhen, who was not young to begin with, had recently aged even more. Therefore, Su Yan had brought Huizhen to the World Sword Sect Conference as a way to relax. Following Huizhen's gaze, Su Yan also saw Chu Xiu. This made him frown. He did not expect Chu Xiu to be here. After all, the World Sword Sect Conference was a grand event of the entire pugilistic world. It was a rather serious one. Therefore, the people who could represent their respective factions were definitely the mainstays of their respective factions. Although Chu Xiu's battle prowess was comparable to the unity of heaven and man realm, in reality, he was still at the 5 Qis origin realm. His experience in the Guanzhong torture room was far from that of the other disciplinary officers and the head of the arrest department. Therefore, Su Yan would never have expected Chu Xiu to be here. Su Yan looked at Huizhen worriedly. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Huizhen turn his head indifferently and wave his hand. Uncle Master, I'm fine. Let's go. Huizhen knew that it was difficult for Su Yan. He did not want to put this Uncle Master, who had always treated him well, in a difficult position. However, some monks from the Vajra Yard were furious. Chu Xiu killed our senior brother Ming Chen and Uncle Master Huizhen. Are we just going to let this matter go? The monks from the Vajra Yard cultivated together. These monks were not Huizhen's disciples, but they were similarly furious over Ming Chen's death. Some of the grudges in the Jianghu were actually unreasonable. Even the Great Light Temple could not stand on the side of reason. In any case, in the eyes of these warriors, Ming Chen was their senior brother. Although he was hot-tempered and easily angered to outsiders, he took good care of them internally. He was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Now that Ming Chen had been killed, they did not care whether Ming Chen had sought trouble with Chu Xiu first or not. As long as they knew that Ming Chen had died at the hands of Chu Xiu, that was enough. Huizhen stopped these people and waved his hand. He said in a low voice, "Don't be rash. I also want to take revenge for Ming Chen, but revenge depends on the time and place. What you are doing now is ruining the reputation of the Great Light Temple. You must consider the bigger picture." Among the warriors present, Huizhen, who had lost his disciple, was the calmest. Although the others were somewhat indignant, as Ming Chen's master, Huizhen, had already said that this matter would be over for now. What else could they say? They could only suppress the anger in their hearts and pretend that they did not see Chu Xiu. When Xiudu, who was walking at the front, saw this scene, he could not help but shake his head. He said, "Revenge breeds revenge. When will there be an end to it? Grudges cannot be suppressed. The more you suppress it, the more it will rebound. At that time, it will probably cause even more unexpected consequences. If we want to completely end this grudge, we must completely kill the other party." Senior brother Xuyun made a mistake this time. For the sake of a favor, he did not let the Great Light Temple take action. However, this deepened the grudge. No one can say for sure how it will develop. Su Yan frowned and said, "Since you know, why didn't you tell senior brother Xuyun?" Xiudu looked at Su Yan like he was looking at an idiot. Based on senior brother Xuyuan's personality, once he has set his mind on something, even if the abbot speaks, it will not be easy for him to change his mind, much less something like this. I don't want to deal with senior brother Xuyuan, so if something like this happens again in the future and you want to speak, I'll remind you to do it yourself. Su Yan was instantly speechless. Actually, Su Yan did not even think about dealing with senior brother Xuyuan. Otherwise, he would not have agreed to Xuyuan's request so easily back then. Xuyuan's position in the Great Light Temple was very special. It could be said that he was second only to the abbot. He was even an existence that could faintly rival the abbot, Su Ci. Furthermore, Xuyuan's personality was a little polarizing. On the outside, he was the Great Light Temple's Wangnian Zen Hall's first seat. He had a profound cultivation in the Buddhist Dharma, and he was an eminent monk with a peaceful personality. However, on the other hand, almost only the people of the Great Light Temple knew about him. He could be said to be paranoid and terrifying. Sometimes, even if the martial artists of the Great Light Temple had to deal with the abbot, they would not want to deal with Xuyuan. After the people of the Great Light Temple took their seats, they looked forward. Not a single one of them looked at Chu Xiu, even though Chu Xiu was their Great Light Temple's enemy. This was also a habit formed by the precepts of the Great Light Temple. Every move was strictly executed. It was very strict. Xia Shaolu saw the actions of the people from the Great Light Temple and said with slight surprise, "Did the Guanzhong torture room help you settle the matter of you killing Ming Chen?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Although the Guanzhong torture room does not have a long history, it still has some foundation. I only killed Ming Chen from the Jingang department, not the most outstanding disciple of the Great Light Temple, Wisdom King, Zongxian. The Guanzhong torture room can still suppress it." "Oh right, did Wisdom King, Zongxian not come to the World Sword Sect Conference this time?" Xia Shaolu shook his head and said, "I heard that Wisdom King, Zongxian had already stepped into the unity of heaven and man realm a few years ago. You can't kill him even if you wanted to. This World Sword Sect Conference is mainly prepared for sword cultivators. If Wisdom King, Zongxian comes, will he go? As a hero ranked in the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger list, if Zongxian doesn't go, he will be ridiculed as a coward. But if he goes, he will have the intention of provoking the major sword sections. So this time, Zongxian didn't come at all. Little Celestial Master Zhang Chengzhen also didn't come. The top 5 of the Dragon and Tiger list is only Chief Sword Fang Qi Shao. Oh right, you New Palace's Yan Fian is also here. The final winner of this World Sword Sect Conference will most likely be Fang Qi Shao. As for the others, they will more or less get some benefits. But among the younger generation of martial artists, when it comes to sword cultivation, no one can beat Fang Qi Shao." Just as Xia Shaolu was discussing Fang Qi Shao, the World Sword Sect Conference was about to begin. Everyone had already taken their seats, but at this time, a youth walked out from Sword King City's side and walked straight towards Chu Xiu. The youth was dressed in white warrior clothes, but he didn't wear the Sword King City's white headscarf. His appearance couldn't be considered too handsome, but he gave people a very natural and comfortable feeling. A simple and unadorned sword with a black hilt was wrapped in sackcloth and hung loosely on his back. It didn't match the temperament of an ordinary martial artist from Sword King City. This young man seemed ordinary, and did not attract as much attention as Nie Donglu. However, when he moved, everyone present could not help but look at him, as if there was some mysterious attraction on this young man's body that attracted everyone's attention. Xia Shaolu was surprised and said, "Chief Swords Fang Qi Shao. You also have a grudge with Fang Qi Shao?" Chu Xiu looked at the approaching Fang Qi Shao and said with an unchanging expression, "I don't have a grudge with Fang Qi Shao, but I don't have a good relationship with Sword King City." At this time, Fang Qi Shao had already walked in front of Chu Xiu and grinned at Chu Xiu. He had a gentle temperament. "My name is Young Master Fang, not Young Master Fang. You should have heard of me. Chu Xiu also had an indifferent expression as he said, Chu Xiu, the Xiu that says everything is over. Since you've come to find me, you should naturally know of me. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.